Chapter 1160. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the palace, she saw such a scene. He Mu and others were in a deadlock with Han Xiling, and Han Xiling's overbearing appearance was even more disgusting. Hongzhuang. Seeing Hongzhuang appear, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but call out with joy. Since the last time Hongzhuang left, they hadn't seen her for a long time. Jiqing. With a happy smile on her delicate and perfect face, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly walked to Xia Jiqing's side. Zhang Yinfeng and others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and a joyful smile appeared on their faces. After not seeing Bailey Hongzhuang for so long, they only felt very surprised. However, the current situation was obviously not the time to catch up. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu and Han Xiling. What happened? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang come out of the palace, Han Xiling and Tao Tsongrong couldn't help but be stunned, their eyes filled with an incredible light. Previously, they had been looking for Bailey Hongzhuang in the palace for a long time, but they hadn't seen Bailey Hongzhuang. They thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Di Beichun, but they didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was really in the palace. It was just that they hadn't been able to find her. How could this be? Han Xiling couldn't understand. She had previously searched every corner of the palace, but she didn't find the slightest breath that belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang's hiding ability was so strong that even she was deceived? Thinking of this, Han Xiling was not willing to admit it at all. Madam, He Mu, He Ming, and the others bowed when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun got married, Bailey Hongzhuang had already become their wife. Other than young sect master's words, they only listened to Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing He Mu again, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Thank you for your hard work. It's my honor to be able to work for young master and madam. Han Xiling's eyes flashed with a crazy light of jealousy when he saw how obedient Darkwood and the others were to Bailey Hongzhuang. She simply couldn't believe what she was seeing. He Mu and the others were actually so respectful to Bailey Hongzhuang. This was completely different from how they treated her before. Tao Tsongrong's face was also filled with astonishment. She knew that He Mu, He Ming, and the others only listened to young sect master's orders and would not listen to anyone else's orders. In the past, the only person who could make He Mu and the others slightly more obedient was Han Xiling. However, even then, He Mu and the others had never been so obedient. It was only when they faced Bailey Hongzhuang that they were completely convinced. This was simply impossible. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang already had such a reputation in the hearts of He Mu and the others? What happened? Bailey Hongzhuang asked again, but her gaze had already turned towards Han Xiling. Obviously, Han Xiling was deliberately looking for trouble. Reporting to Madam, Miss Han said that young sect master had said before he left that no one was allowed to enter the bedchamber. Hence, he is not allowing us to enter now. He Mu reported truthfully. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a trace of ridicule. Looks like this Han Xiling was really at his wit's end and could only come up with such meaningless reasons. Han Xiling stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Her reasons were completely valid, and she wanted to see what ability Bailey Hongzhuang had to change this situation. Chapter 1161. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. This Han Xiling was not a good guy to provoke. If he didn't already have a certain trump card, they believed that Han Xiling would not do this. However, in the face of Han Xiling's provocation, Bailey Hongzhuang did not look at him and directly said to everyone, "Let's go in." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly turned around, as if she did not see the existence of Han Xiling. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but be startled. However, they naturally listened to Bailey Hongzhuang's arrangement and immediately turned around together with Bailey Hongzhuang and walked towards the palace. He Mu, He Ming, and the others were naturally no exception. Since the young sect master was not there, they would listen to the orders of the madam. As for the others, no matter who they were, they would not pay attention to them. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang directly ignoring his existence, Han Xiling's face became gloomy in an instant, his eyes full of resentment and disgust. Stop, Han Shieling said angrily. However, in the face of Han Shiling's threatening words, Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to hear it and did not even stop her footsteps. Seeing this, Han Shieling could not hold back. His figure flashed and directly blocked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. His delicate and cold face was full of anger. I'm talking to you. Did you not hear me? So what if I heard you? So what if I didn't hear you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. I said, before Big Brother D comes back, no one can enter Big Brother D's palace. Han Shiling's voice was hoarse and his words were decisive. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands were crossed over her chest, her eyes unscrupulously looking at Han Shiling. Her beautiful pink lips were curved in a mocking arc, and the words she spoke were full of ridicule and contempt. I say, don't you feel bored after singing a one-man show for so long? She just couldn't understand why Han Shieling was still so stubborn despite everything that had happened in the conference hall. What do you mean? Han Shiling's eyes were dark and cold. Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look was an eyesore to her. I thought that a cold and arrogant person like you would have a strong sense of self-esteem. After such a direct and clean rejection, you should know how to avoid it. But now, it seems that I have overestimated your self-esteem. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with a cold light. Her words were not polite at all. This Han Shieling kept finding trouble for her. She was afraid that if she didn't make it clear, this woman wouldn't understand what she was saying. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a sharp knife stabbing into Han Shiling's heart. Everyone understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was trying to say. That is, Han Shiling is shameless. Any woman with a little bit of shame would not behave like this after being rejected, but Han Shiling was still so unrelenting in finding trouble. Han Shiling felt as if she had been slapped by Bailey Hongzhuang in public. Her expression was extremely ugly, and her eyes were burning with anger. She wanted nothing more than to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang out again. I want to bring them in. No matter what the consequences are, I will take responsibility. Chapter 1162. If you want to find a great elder to judge, then it's up to you. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly passed by Han Shieling in front of her and walked in the direction of the palace. Before, Han Shieling had made things difficult for her, but now she dared to put on such an attitude towards her friends. It was really unbearable. At this point, Han Shieling had no other way. Even if she really found the great elder, it wouldn't change anything. Once things got out of hand, Han Shieling would be the one who would be embarrassed in the end. He Mu, Xia Jiqing, and others also followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang, passing by Han Shieling and Tao Tsongro. For this woman, they now only had disgust. Xia Jiqing and Zhang Yunfeng looked at each other. Their faces were full of amazement. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so domineering when she appeared. Thinking back to when they were in the Luoyun Mountains, Han Shiling's arrogant appearance was completely contemptuous of Hongzhuang. Now, in just a short time, the situation had completely changed. Thinking of how Han Shieling was angered by Bailey Hongzhuang to the point of gnashing her teeth, where was the original fairy-like posture? When Han Shieling saw Bailey Hongzhuang walking in front of her, she almost broke her teeth. Damn it, Han Shieling said angrily. This Bailey Hongzhuang really didn't put her in her eyes at all. Miss, this Bailey Hongzhuang is too arrogant. If we don't deal with her well, she will really be lawless in the future. Tao Tsongro was also angry. She had never seen anyone in Tiangang sect who dared to speak to the miss like this. This Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too arrogant. She'll know sooner or later that she's nothing. Han Shieling clenched her fists. Her murderous aura surged like a storm in her heart. She would never give Bailey Hongzhuang the chance to continue being arrogant in front of her. Looking at Han Shieling's furious expression, Tao Tsongro didn't dare to say anything more. She believed that Miss would definitely have a way to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. It wasn't until everyone came to the vicinity of Di Bei Chen's palace that the originally tense people relaxed a little. Madam, since Lady Xia and the others have arrived, I shall take my leave first. He Mu bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang and said respectfully, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. You must be tired from the long journey. Go back and have a good rest. Thank you, madam. After He Mu, He Ming, and the others left, Xia Jiqing was the first to approach Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, you were so domineering just now. That Han Xiling was simply angered to death by you. Yes, I really can't connect this Han Xiling with the previous Han Xiling. The contrast is too big. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She's now at her wit's end. It's been hard on you. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing waved her hand indifferently. What's this? When I think of Xia Jiqing's appearance just now, I feel a burst of joy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the refreshing Xia Jiqing, and the smile in her eyes deepened. I haven't seen you for a while, but your temperament hasn't changed at all. Hongzhuang, I haven't seen you for so long. I missed you so much. Chapter 1163. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing, who were hugging each other, and their faces showed a happy smile. During the time when Bailey Hongzhuang left, Xia Jiqing had been missing Hongzhuang very much. They could feel this kind of longing. If Xia Jiqing hadn't insisted on waiting for Hongzhuang at the school, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to come to Tiangang sect. Speaking of which, they had to thank Xia Jiqing. Hongzhuang, you spent a lot of time going out to gain experience this time. I feel that your cultivation seems to have improved a lot. Dongfang, you looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not as good as his. After a year of cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had surpassed his. He remembered that when they had just separated, although Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was stronger than his, he could still judge how much stronger she was compared to him. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang now, he couldn't judge at all. He couldn't feel any aura at all. With this point alone, he could be sure that Bailey Hongzhuang had improved a lot during this time. As Dongfang Yu's voice fell, everyone's eyes condensed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. They were all very curious about how much improvement Di Beichen had brought Bailey Hongzhuang out to gain experience. Yes, Hongzhuang, what's your cultivation now? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. During this time, she had been working hard at the school to cultivate and didn't waste any time. Her progress was very pleasing. In fact, it wasn't just her. The entire special enrollment class cultivators had made great progress. Feeling everyone's curiosity, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, My current cultivation is Orange Realm Level 1. With the improvement of her strength, the effect of the demon summoning scripture was also reflected. Presently, other than when she utilized her origin energy, other people were completely unable to discern her cultivation. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing and the others present all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. They couldn't believe what they had heard. What did you say? Orange. Level 1? Did I hear that right? Everyone couldn't help but open their mouths wide. This news was too shocking. Although they had already imagined that Di Beichen would bring Bailey Hongzhuang out to train, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would definitely increase by a lot. This speed of improvement was simply too fast. This was simply torturing them to death. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. You didn't hear wrong. It's true. They were all her friends, so there was no need for her to hide anything. What's more, they were all going to participate in the assessment competition together. They were companions whose lives depended on each other. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang speaking seriously, even if everyone felt that this idea was too difficult to accept, they also understood that this was the truth. Bailey Hongzhuang was a cultivation genius. They simply couldn't compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. They were completely looking for trouble. Originally, I was quite happy with the progress of my cultivation. Now that I know your strength, I don't feel the slightest bit of happiness. It's really too much of a blow. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. It was too difficult for her to close the gap between her and Hongzhuang's strength. Comparisons are odious. Bai Junyu sighed. Chapter 1164. After not seeing each other for a long time, everyone was chatting and it was very lively. After some greetings, everyone also visited Di Beichen's palace. They had never had such treatment. Hong Zhuang. Fortunately, you didn't marry Xianyuan Huan, huh? Xia Jiqing looked at Di Beichen palace and couldn't help but sigh. Xianyuan Huan and Di Beichen were simply clouds and mud. If Hong Zhuang really married Xianyuan Huan, it would be a big loss. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Many things in the world were so coincidental. If it weren't for Xianyuan Huan breaking off the engagement, there wouldn't be so many things happening later. Thinking about it, she might not exist in this world. Tian Gangzong's young lord's wife. In the future, she will be Tian Gangzong's wife. This identity is enough to make people look up to her. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes showed envy. This kind of good fortune was really not something that anyone could have. Right, where did Di Beichen go? Cui Haoyan couldn't help but ask. They had heard from Han Xiling that Di Beichen had left, but they still didn't know where Di Beichen went. He went to discuss the assessment with the other sections. You should be back soon. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with smiles. Seeing this group of friends again, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood was also very good. When they knew that Di Beichen had gone to discuss the assessment, everyone only felt that the gap was becoming more and more obvious. They still didn't know if they were eligible to participate in the assessment, but Di Beichen had already become the organizer of the assessment. This was simply, everyone should be tired from rushing all the way here. Beichen and I have prepared a place for you to stay. Everyone should rest first. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and bright eyes were filled with the light of concern. Her voice was gentle. The distance from Tsanglan School to Tiangangzhou was not short. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded in agreement. They had hardly stopped to rest during their journey here. Not only that, before arriving at Tiangang Sect, their mood was extremely excited, but now after relaxing, they only felt a burst of exhaustion and really needed a good rest. Seeing the exhaustion on everyone's faces, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately led everyone to the back room. Di Beichen's palace was extremely large, so it wouldn't be a problem even if everyone stayed there. Logically speaking, they should be staying in the guest residential area, but Han Xiling obviously wouldn't give up so easily. If they stayed outside, it would cause a lot of trouble. It was precisely because of this that she and Di Beichen made this decision after discussing it for a while. Soon, everyone returned to their respective rooms. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing walked into the room together. Hongzhuang, I think that Han Xiling is very fierce. Have you been bullied by her when you lived here? As soon as she entered the room, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. When she thought of Xia Jiqing's overbearing appearance, she knew that she wasn't easy to get along with. Hongzhuang only had Di Beichen to protect her in Tiangangzhou. Although she had never seen it with her own eyes, she also knew that with Hongzhuang's identity as the young lord of Tiangangzhou, it would inevitably cause a lot of opposition. Chapter 1165. Xia Jiqing took a deep look at Bailey Hongzhuang. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth and did not hide anything, she was relieved. That's good. I always feel that Han Xiling is not a guy who is easy to deal with. Xia Jiqing curled her lips. Affinity was a very strange thing. When she first saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt very congenial, and when she first saw Han Xiling, she felt a burst of disgust. Even if he is difficult to deal with, it doesn't matter, because I am even more difficult to deal with. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's joking appearance, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh. That's right, you're a person who never suffers a loss. Hongzhuang's character has always been that if people respect her, she will respect them tenfold. This was the same as her opponent. Hongzhuang, where did you go to train during this time? Xia Jiqing curled her lips. After that, there was no news of you. We were worried that you would not come back. I will definitely go back, but this time the situation is very complicated. The location is very far away, and it is not convenient to send messages. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She knew that Xia Jiqing really cared about her. We went to the bloody ground abyss this time. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but widen her eyes filled with an incredible color. Bloody ground abyss. One of the three abyss? The Bloody Ground Abyss was so famous that she naturally heard of it, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to go to this place. According to the information she learned, the Bloody Ground Abyss was a gathering place for demons. Many cultivators once went in and never came back. Many cultivators regarded the Bloody Ground Abyss as an excellent place to improve their strength, but for more cultivators, everything inside was no different from scourges and beasts. They were absolutely unwilling to go to such a place. Many cultivators who went there lost their humanity and completely fell. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Not bad. You guys are too bold. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but exclaim. She finally understood why Hongzhuang took so long to come back. Just how far was the Bloodground Abyss? Just traveling there would take a long time, and it was filled with danger. He was afraid that under such circumstances, Hongzhuang and the others would be wholeheartedly focused on their cultivation and would not consider other things at all. It's all right. Didn't I come back safe and sound? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. When she first learned about the Bloodground Abyss, she was very interested and didn't think of anything else. However, from the reactions of the others, she understood that many people did not accept the existence of the Bloodground Abyss. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded. Indeed, as long as you come back safely. At this moment, Xia Jiqing completely understood. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation could improve so much in such a short time. In such a dangerous place, it would be difficult for him not to improve quickly, although the extent of this improvement was still somewhat abnormal. After the two lay on the soft couch and chatted for a long time, Xia Jiqing gradually fell asleep, and Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the house. Chapter 1166. Xiao He was very curious. Logically speaking, the news of Situ Yan's return was a big deal, and the entire Tiangang sect should be in an uproar. However, Tiangang sect had been calm for the past 2 days, as if nothing had happened. It was really strange. Sect Master can't have left again, right? Xiaobai was stunned. If the sect Master left again, it would be too difficult to accept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with a wise and far-sighted look in her eyes. Her voice was full of certainty. The sect master has just returned and can't leave immediately. It's just that the sect master has never appeared in front of everyone. Perhaps the sect master is waiting for Di Beichen to return. With the sect master's love for Di Beichen and his rare return, and knowing that so many things had happened in Tiangang sect, it was impossible for him to leave without seeing Di Beichen. On the contrary, the sect master should not leave for a while. Master's right. I think the sect master should have successfully broken through this time. He looks to be around 50 years old, but his real age is definitely more than that, Xiaobai said immediately. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a faint light. When cultivators reached a certain age, once their strength broke through, their appearance would also recover some of their youth. This was especially true for powerful existences like the masters of aristocratic families and sections. Their strength was definitely not comparable to ordinary cultivators. Similarly, their lifespan would also be much longer than ordinary cultivators. One might look 50 years old, but in fact it was possible to be 60 or 70 years old or even older. This was the charm of cultivation. Many cultivators desperately cultivated in pursuit of immortality. Only after reaching that level could they understand the true meaning of life. If that's the case, then it's really good news. Her exquisite and alluring face revealed a clear and moving smile. Her already outstanding face was now even more charming and unforgettable. When Di Beichen returned to his bedroom, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang in such a state. His incomparably handsome face was filled with a trace of intoxication and admiration. "Wife, you seem to be in a good mood." Di Beichen quietly appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. The fragrance of Bailey Hongzhuang's body wafted into his nose, making him infatuated. When Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that there was someone behind her, she was extremely tense. However, after smelling that familiar scent, her tense body relaxed, and she allowed Di Beichun to embrace her. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. That's natural. Everyone's already here. Di Beichun naturally understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about. When he saw He Mu, he already knew that all the cultivators from the special enrollment class had arrived. I've returned a little late. Has Han Xiling come looking for trouble again? Di Beichun frowned. When he had heard He Ming's report, he had understood what had happened during his absence. It looked like he had made the right choice by allowing Hong Zhuang to cultivate in the stone room. Otherwise, a head-on confrontation would have been unavoidable. Come to think of it, he never thought that Han Xiling would actually refuse to listen to his advice. He had already made his intentions very clear, but Han Xiling had only agreed on the surface, but opposed on the inside. Chapter 1167. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood his thoughts, Di Beichun praised in his heart, "My wife is really smart. Now that she is at her wit's end, she can't think of a way to deal with me, so she is messing around like this. You could do whatever you want, as long as she doesn't provoke me. If she provokes me, I won't be polite." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged, her expression indifferent and calm. She understood why Di Beichun was put in a difficult position. The Great Elder's position in Tiangang's sect was extremely stable, and Han Xiling was the Great Elder's granddaughter. For the time being, he could only punish Han Xiling, but he couldn't expel Han Xiling. After all, the first problem that Di Beichun had to solve was the two palace masters, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi. As for the others, they had to be put aside for the time being. As the clan master of an aristocratic family in her previous life, she was very clear about this situation, so she naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Di Beichun. This was because she believed in Di Beichun. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun also understood Bailey Hongzhuang's support for him, and his heart was moved. Immediately, his hands that hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightened, wishing that he could directly knead Bailey Hongzhuang into his bones. "My wife, I love you." A low, hoarse, and magnetic voice rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Her originally indifferent and wanton figure unconsciously stiffened, and her beautiful face was boiling hot. These three words always had an indescribable charm, and when these words came from Di Beichun's mouth, it made people even more addicted and unable to extricate themselves. Feeling the change in Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun couldn't help but stand in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her blushing face added a trace of feminine charm. "My wife, until now you have never called me husband. Why don't you call me that?" Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. Even though she had already determined that Di Beichun was the person that she would hold for the rest of her life, she really couldn't bring herself to say those two words. "My wife, just call me that once." Di Beichun stretched out a finger and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang, his expression revealing a bit of desire. "I won't." Bailey Hongzhuang turned her body. With her back facing Di Beichun, she really couldn't stand Di Beichun's teasing. "Just once, I won't tell anyone." Di Beichun's smile widened. He really wanted to hear it. "I won't. My wife, just once." "Wife, your husband wants to hear it." "Hongzha husband." As a soft voice sounded, Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise, his handsome face revealing an indescribable surprise. "My wife, what did you just say?" Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichun. She had already said it. "My wife, can you say it again?" Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hands tightly, his starry eyes shining brightly, like a bright galaxy, gorgeous and full of charm. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to glare at Di Beichun and ignore him, but after seeing the joy and desire in Di Beichun's eyes, her heart couldn't help but move. "Husband." This time, Di Beichun heard it clearly. He immediately hugged Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and spun in circles on the spot. "Ha!" In the garden, Di Beichun's unbridled laughter spread. All the flowers could feel his joy. Chapter 1168. Di Beichun, who was hugging Bailey Hongzhuang, felt as if he had the entire world in his hands. That kind of joy and satisfaction was something they had never seen before. After a long while, Di Deep Bachin finally put Bailey Hongzhuang down. Bailey Hongzhuang blushed as she looked helplessly at Deep Bachin. Everyone is here. Aren't you going to wake everyone up like this? However, Deep Bachin didn't seem to mind at all. They would be happy to see this. Looking at Deep Bachin's shameless manner, Bailey Hongzhuang felt helpless. She had long seen that this guy was a scoundrel by nature, just like how he had directly latched onto her in the past. However, this was her scoundrel style. All right, Bachin, I want to tell you something. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped teasing him and became serious. After you left, I saw the sovereign. She had to tell Di Bachin about this news first, because Di Bachin had always been concerned about the whereabouts of the sovereign and was worried about the sovereign's recent situation. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Bachin couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. His deep and handsome eyes were filled with indescribable shock. What did you say? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded affirmatively. I'm telling the truth. What did you see him? Di Bachin's expression turned serious. In these 4 years, he didn't have the slightest bit of news about his master. He didn't expect that Hongzhuang would actually see him. When I was cultivating in the stone room, someone suddenly came in. I was worried that it would be someone else. I didn't expect it to be the sovereign. However, the sovereign didn't seem to have appeared in front of anyone. Everyone didn't know that the sovereign had returned. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know what the sectmaster was thinking. However, she believed that since Di Bachin had returned, the sovereign would definitely meet with Di Bachin. She was certain of this. Di Bachin frowned slightly. He naturally knew that what Hongzhuang said could not be false. As long as Master was back, it was a good thing. As long as Master returns, he will definitely meet me. Di Bachin smiled faintly. It seemed that the situation was getting better. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. You should go back to your room first. Maybe the sect leader is waiting for you. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Okay, Di Bachin replied. Now, he had a lot of evidence. Since his master was back, it would be easier to deal with all these problems. At night, Di Bachin prepared good wine and delicacies to entertain the cultivators of the special enrollment class. They were all classmates. Now that they were gathered in Tiangang sect, the atmosphere was even happier. Hongzhuang, Di Bachin, thank you for inviting us to Tiangang sect to participate in the assessment together. I toast you. Xia Jiqing raised her glass. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin smiled at each other and immediately picked up their wine glasses. Speaking of which, I am grateful that you can come. With you and Hongzhuang participating in the assessment competition together, I could be more at ease. Di Bachin smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of affection. Hongzhuang, I have one thing I don't understand. Since you have already come to Tiangang sect, why do you still want to participate in the assessment competition? Zhang Yinfeng couldn't help but ask the doubts in her heart. She always felt that such a move was a bit superfluous. Chapter 1169. Cui Haoyin also looked at Zhang Yinfeng. In his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't participate in the assessment if she wasn't forced into a corner. Looking at the changing expressions of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind at all and smiled, to be more justified. As soon as these words came out, everyone understood what was going on. Previously, they had neglected the pressure that Bailey Hongzhuang had to endure when she was with Di Bachin. All the girls were very envious of Bailey Hongzhuang's luck to be liked by Di Bachin. However, they had never thought about the things that they had to pay in order to stand by Di Bachin's side. Zhang Yinfeng also understood that her question was inappropriate and immediately said, Hongzhuang. Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's anxious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. It's nothing. I think that the assessment is an excellent opportunity to gain experience. You can see the outstanding cultivators from all over the world. Only with competition can you improve. She originally wanted to participate in the assessment because the assessment was a touchstone. She had to improve her cultivation as soon as possible. Chapter 1170. Everyone listened attentively to Di Bachin's introduction. In fact, if they hadn't entered the special enrollment class of the Azure Water School, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to participate in this assessment. Although this assessment is an assessment, it takes a very long time. It will take 2 years. As we all know, there are many monsters in the Shangxian continent. A few hundred years ago, there was a monster riot. At that time, the humans suffered a very serious attack and were almost killed by the monsters. Hearing this, everyone's eyes condensed on Di Beichen. They all knew about the monster riot a few hundred years ago, but they didn't know what this monster riot had to do with the assessment. In fact, there were so many monsters that the humans couldn't deal with. So some peerless powerhouses deliberately created a small world and placed the monsters in it. However, the reproduction ability of the monsters is very amazing. Our human powerhouses found that these monsters were constantly reproducing in the small world. Their power is constantly trying to break the seal of the small world. Once they succeed in breaking the seal, they will appear in the Shangxian continent again and cause great damage to the human race. Di Beichen's voice was a bit heavy. There was a certain amount of risk in every opportunity. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. You mean that the place where we participate in the assessment is a small world full of monsters? Di Beichen couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. His wife was really clever, understanding with just a hint. Yes, if we participate in the assessment, we can help kill these monsters. On one hand, we can solve a hidden danger in the Shangxian continent. On the other hand, we can let the major sects understand our strength and recruit disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. This is really an excellent assessment method, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Xia Jiqing and the others also understood, but they couldn't help but open their mouths. They never thought that the assessment would be like this. Where's that small world? Bai Junyu only felt incredulous. Does this mean that there's another place in our Shangxian continent that's occupied by demonic beasts? It's just that we don't usually see it? Looking at Bai Junyu's confused expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain. Space is a very mysterious power. Some powerful cultivators can use their own strength to construct a space that belongs only to them. You can think of it this way. That small world is like a spatial crack drifting outside the Shangxian continent, and that seal is the place where the small world and the Shangxian continent meet. Once those demonic beasts break through the seal, they will appear in the Shangxian continent. That will be a terrifying disaster. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with wisdom. After learning about the existence of this small world, she understood the need for the assessment competition that was held once every 5 years. The so-called small world was simply a battlefield. I see. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to know about this kind of thing. She was really amazing. Chapter 1171. Yes, just like what Hongzhuang said. Di Beichen nodded. So, if we participate in the assessment, we will be going to the small world to kill monster beasts. Xia Jiqing swallowed a mouthful of saliva. According to Di Beichen's words, the small world was completely a nest of monster beasts. Yes, so participating in the assessment will also be very risky. You also know the strength of the monster beasts. It is definitely not easy to live in a place full of monster beasts for 2 years. In every assessment, the number of cultivators who fall in the small world is a large number. Therefore, you also have to think about whether you want to participate in the assessment. Di Beichen looked at the crowd. Although the assessment was an excellent opportunity for all cultivators, it was very risky. Once you entered, you may never be able to come out. Therefore, everyone should consider whether they want to go or not. After all, once you participate, there will be no chance for regret. He never felt that there was any problem with not participating in the assessment. Life itself was the most important. If you don't have enough confidence and strength, going to the small world is tantamount to suicide. Chapter 1172. Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin looked at each other. Both of them looked a little hesitant. Perhaps they were not as confident as Bailey Hongzhuang, nor were they as aggressive as Bai Junyu. However, after a short period of hesitation, The two of them expressed their stance together. We also have no problem. Seeing that no one flinched, a smile appeared on everyone's faces at the same time. Since everyone has made a decision, then I wish everyone the best. Di Baichen smiled. Every assessment competition lasts for 2 years. Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Di Baichen nodded slightly. Yes, there are a lot of monster beasts in this small world. Every time, the cultivators who participate in the assessment competition can solve a lot of them. If the time is short, it is simply not enough to solve these problems. Then why don't we let the various sects send people to solve these monster beasts? Bai Junyu frowned. Since these monster beasts were emerging endlessly, it was better to kill them all. This way, there would be no more trouble. Compared to killing them every 5 years, this kind of situation would undoubtedly solve the root cause completely. The number of monster beasts is too amazing. If we want to kill them all, we will have to pay a price that we can't estimate. If they were so easy to kill, we wouldn't have had to create this small world to solve this problem. Di Baichen slowly said. The existence of this small world was also a big problem for the various forces in the Shengxian continent. They had always wanted to solve the threat of the monster beasts in this small world, but they really couldn't afford the price, so they came up with this method. Listening to Di Baichen's explanation, Bai Junyu nodded slightly. His thinking was a bit too simple. It seems that this time, we will have a monster beast war. Dong Fangyu smiled. Compared to the struggle between humans, this struggle with the demonic beasts might be a little easier. White Lion's eyes lit up when he heard that there was an endless number of demonic beasts inside. As far as it was concerned, it wasn't endless demonic beasts, but endless demonic crystals. If it went to the small world, then it wouldn't have to worry about the demon crystals at all. Although your main opponents in this small world are Yao beasts, the competition between cultivators is not small either. In short, you have to act according to the situation. Don't trust others easily. Di Baichen's deep black eyes revealed a trace of worry. His voice was slightly heavy. The assessment competition that lasted for 2 years was very risky. He only hoped that the participants could return safely. Although this was impossible. We will. Everyone nodded. They were all people who cherished their lives. They only hoped that they could successfully pass the assessment and become a member of the sect. It's still too early to say that. We haven't won the right to participate yet. Gong Shaoqing's voice was still cold, but he clearly stated a fact. It was not easy to obtain the qualifications to participate in the competition. No matter how much they thought about it now, it would be useless if they could not obtain the qualifications to participate. By the way, Baichen, how many participants does your Tiangang sect have? Cui Haoyan looked puzzled. He had heard that each empire only had a few slots. Their group already had a lot of people, so it would not be easy to enter. Chapter 1173. Sects were different from dynasties. This assessment was organized by sects, so they naturally had the most number of slots. For sects, they did not have a problem with the number of slots. As long as they could pass the assessment, they would be qualified. However, it was definitely not an easy task to pass this test. This was completely dependent on one's own strength. No matter who it was, if they could not pass the assessment, then they would not be qualified. This was because every sect would not let a single cultivator affect their reputation. Hearing Di Baichen's words, everyone was relieved. This meant that as long as they were strong enough, they would be able to participate in the assessment together. There are also many opportunities in the pocket dimension. It is said that this pocket dimension was originally a part of the Shengxian continent. Once, a cultivator found an inheritance in the pocket dimension, and his strength increased rapidly. Not only that, the pocket dimension has existed for many years. All kinds of medicinal herbs, ores, and heavenly treasures may exist. If you are lucky, you might be able to find a treasure. Di Baichen had a warm and charming smile on his face. This was one of the advantages of the pocket dimension. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang sat in front of Di Baichen. Her beautiful face was flushed red from drinking, but her black eyes were still shining. Baichen, did you see the sect leader today? Her delicate and beautiful face showed a trace of concern. She had not heard any news about the sect leader today, and was worried that Di Beichen would not be able to see the sect leader. Di Beichen's lips curled into his signature devilish smile. My wife is becoming more and more concerned about me. Seeing Di Beichen's teasing look, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned serious. If you continue to be like this, I won't talk to you anymore. Seeing this, Di Beichen hurriedly said, My wife is mighty. Your husband won't joke around anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled again. In terms of teasing, she could not compare to Di Beichen. However, when it came to putting on a serious face, Di Beichen was not her opponent. Everything is just as my wife expected. Di Beichen curled his seductive lips. I saw Master. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark and bright eyes were filled with joy. Her original worries also quietly dissipated. That's good. Wife, don't you want to know what Master thinks of you? Di Beichen blinked. His deep and charming eyes were filled with infinite charm. He only felt that the Hongzhuang in front of him was exceptionally cute. This little woman was especially concerned about his affairs, and he was very touched. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback, but she pretended to be nonchalant and asked, What's your evaluation? Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent look was a disguise, but he didn't expose her. He smiled and said, Master said that I have good taste. As he spoke, Di Beichen's expression revealed a hint of pride. He also felt that he had good taste. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to find such a treasure like his wife in a vast sea of people. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips unconsciously curled. Although the sect master had already expressed his thoughts when he saw her, she still felt very happy to hear it again. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, his eyes filled with deep affection. Wife, you can rest assured now. I said that Master doesn't have any prejudice against family background. Hongzhuang had been worried about this problem before. He said that it wasn't a problem, but it still couldn't dispel the worry in Hongzhuang's heart. Chapter 1174. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, clear and moving. She didn't say anything, but her smile had already explained everything. Wife, tomorrow is the day of the assessment. At that time, there will be other cultivators besides you who will be participating in the assessment. Many people in the sect will be paying attention to this matter. I will accompany you to the location of the assessment at that time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her eyes flashing with curiosity. How do you guys do the assessment? Wife, how do you think we should do the assessment? Di Beichen asked back. I heard that the assessment in the dynasty is a competition, and the strongest cultivators will be able to get spot. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Thinking about it, the majority of people used this assessment method, which was the simplest and most direct. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish arc, and he chuckled. That is the way the dynasty does it. There is a certain flaw in it, and the sect selection method is different. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang only looked at Di Beichen. Want to know what Di Beichen meant by a better method. Tomorrow, you will enter an assessment array, and there will be all kinds of environments and all kinds of monsters inside. The longer you can last, the more outstanding your ability will be. Not only us, many sects use the selection method. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with wisdom. The selection method used by the dynasty does indeed select the strongest cultivators. But in our opinion, having the highest cultivation and the strongest strength doesn't mean that one's ability is the strongest. In the small world, one may encounter all kinds of dangerous situations, which those cultivators who are only good at fighting in the arena will not be able to deal with. Courage and adaptability are also extremely important factors, so our selection will be even more perfect. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. What Di Beichen said was right. She had seen many cultivators perform extremely well on the battle stage, but their reactions in real danger were extremely bad. This was just like Lu Qinhua. Her cultivation was not weak. On the contrary, it was very outstanding. However, in the face of danger, she could not display her true strength. If such a cultivator were to go to a small world, their survival rate would be extremely low. Come to think of it, the big sects organize the assessment tournament to let the young cultivators go to the small world to kill the demonic beasts and improve their strength at the same time. It was not to send everyone to their deaths. So, this test is an illusion array? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Deep Bachin nodded slightly. Not bad. The methods of a sect are truly different from the rest. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with emotion and amazement. Just from Di Bachin's expression, she could tell that this illusory formation was not simple. 1,000 years ago, the sects and aristocratic families did not have this kind of selection method. She was very curious, wondering what kind of illusory formation this was. Seeing the curiosity on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Bachin chuckled. Wife, you'll be able to see it tomorrow. Although you know it is an environment, the effect is extremely realistic. Many cultivators find it difficult to face that scene when they use it for the first time. However, when it is used in the assessment, all cultivators will be taking the assessment for the first time. You have to be mentally prepared. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. Just from Di Bachin's words, she could guess some clues. Chapter 1175. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was just right. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up early. Today was the day of the competition, and they were all fully prepared. Di Bachin saw that everyone was ready and immediately smiled. Let's go to the assessment array together. Everyone nodded and immediately followed Di Bachin in the direction of the assessment array. Along the way, many cultivators were surprised when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Originally, they didn't know why this group of unfamiliar cultivators came to Tiangang's sect. Now that they saw the young sect master leading them in the direction of the assessment array, they understood. It turned out that these cultivators were all here to participate in the assessment competition. I heard that yesterday's senior sister Han had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang again. Now it seems that the young sect master is really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Senior sister Han has completely lost her previous status. Isn't that so? Didn't you see that senior sister Han rarely appears in front of us recently? Isn't it because of this matter that she doesn't want to come out to meet people? Everyone's eyes were locked on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. During this period, Bailey Hongzhuang was the focus of their attention. Han Shieling had been guarding Di Bachin for so many years, but Di Bachin's heart was completely on Bailey Hongzhuang. Whether it was from the point of envy or other aspects, Bailey Hongzhuang made it impossible for them not to pay attention to her. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Bachin indifferently. All the discussions would disappear when she returned from the assessment competition. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the location of the assessment array. At a glance, the assessment array was filled with cultivators, but most of them were here to watch the fun. There were only about 20 cultivators who were really going to take the assessment. According to Di Bachin's introduction, the cultivators here were recommended by some people with high status in Tiangang sect. In fact, the cultivators who entered the assessment competition from the sect would have a higher status in the assessment competition. They were the real seeded contestants. Han Shilling came to the assessment array early in the morning. Since Bailey Hongzhuang announced that she wanted to take part in the assessment competition, then she had to go through the assessment array. She was very curious. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't even qualify for the assessment competition, then it would be a real joke. That day in the meeting hall, Bailey Hongzhuang was very clear. Therefore, not only Han Shieling, but the Great Elder and the 4 Palace Masters were also there. After Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey, and Bailey Hongzhuang Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Han Shilling's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. The coldness and resentment in his eyes were obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Han Shilling's face and then stopped paying attention. She was surprised by Han Shilling's persistence. Young sect leader. Everyone bowed when they saw Di Bachin. Di Bachin nodded. His handsome face was dignified. His gaze then fell on the cultivators who were preparing to take the assessment. Today is the day of the competition. I hope everyone can perform well and represent Tiangang's sect in the assessment competition. Chapter 1176. All the female disciples present had no resistance when they saw Di Beichen's handsome face. What's more, Di Beichen was the young lord of Tiangang's sect. However, the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang made the fantasy in everyone's heart fade a little, but this still did not stop their fantasy. Looking at the appearance of everyone's fighting spirit, Di Beichen was also very satisfied. His eyes then fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He smiled and said, "You also go to the team to prepare for the assessment later." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately walked into the team. In front of the disciples of Tiangang's sect, they would maintain absolute respect for Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes couldn't help but fall on the illusion array in front of them. The scope of this array was not small. It had not been opened yet, but they could notice that there were many mysterious totems in the center of the array. Xia Jiqing curiously looked at the assessment array. "This is the illusion array that we're going to take the assessment in a while." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, it said that this illusion array can simulate all kinds of demonic beasts. When you take the test, you must control the fear in your heart and display your strongest strength. Fear was the most difficult emotion for human beings to overcome. Even if it was an illusion array, the feeling was still extremely realistic. Except for the pain, everything else was the same. Therefore, it was not a simple matter to pass this assessment. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others all showed a serious look. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang both explained the illusion array to them. They also understood the content of the assessment and kept convincing themselves that everything they would face later was fake. However, no matter how well they convinced themselves now, it may not be as they wished during the assessment. The cultivators who were waiting for the assessment, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, had a look of dissatisfaction in their eyes. There had always been a lot of capable people in Tiangang's sect. Even though the people from the special enrollment class had only shown their faces once when they followed He Mu to Tiangang's sect, everyone had already found out their identities. He was a cultivator from the special enrollment class of the Kanglan College and a friend of Bailey Hongzhuang. The Azure Water School did have a certain reputation, but that influence was only within the dynasty. For the sects, the reputation of the Azure Water School was obviously not loud enough. In their opinion, the reason why this group of cultivators from the special enrollment class could come to Tiangang's sect for the assessment was entirely because of Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang really dares to do anything just because the young lord likes her. She came to Tiangang's sect to take the assessment by herself, but she even brought her friends here. The young lord also allowed her to fool around. It's really amazing. No choice who asked young sect master to like it. However, if these people don't perform well and can't even obtain a single spot, then that would be really funny. Everyone was talking about it. In fact, almost no one present was optimistic about the strength of Xia Jiqing and the others. Haha, in my opinion, this possibility is very high. Han Xiling chuckled, and the words he said did not give Bailey Hongzhuang any face. When she knew that Xia Jiqing and the others came here to take the assessment, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had dug a hole for herself. Chapter 1177. Originally, the discussion of the surrounding cultivators had already made Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces very ugly. They also knew that the crowd was right. The reason why they could come to Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment was indeed because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, the crowd's denial of their strength was something they would not admit. Even if they were not born in a famous sect, they still had confidence in their own strength. Indeed, they may not be the strongest here, but they also had confidence that they would not be the worst. The other people's comments were fine, but Han Xiling actually took the initiative to find trouble, which was not something they could tolerate. The dignified young lady of Tiangang's sect doesn't even have a little tolerance. Zhang Yinfeng coldly glanced at Han Xiling. Since Han Xiling was so rude to them, she naturally would not be polite to Han Xiling. This woman not only has no tolerance, but is simply narrow-minded. Why bother with her? Xia Jiqing coldly snorted. She really did not like Han Shieling, but this woman liked to jump in front of them. Gong Shaoqing, Dong Fengyu, and the other men just faintly looked at Han Shieling. They could not argue with a woman, but the disgust on their faces was still obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Han Shieling usually found trouble with her, but now she also ridiculed Xia Jiqing and the others. It was too much. You really have a kind of magic that makes people hate you as soon as you open your mouth. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth, her words did not give Han Shieling any face. The smile on Han Shieling's face suddenly froze, followed by a touch of anger from her eyes, revealing an unspeakable anger. Bailey Hongzhuang, do you really think you're so great? Han Shieling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. She couldn't bear the thought of Bailey Hongzhuang acting all high and mighty in front of her. When Han Hongyi saw the conflict between Han Shieling and Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but glance at Han Shieling. What happened before could be hidden from others, but not from him. Before, there was no one on the side, so if there was a conflict, then it was fine. Now there were so many people here, if Shi Ling had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would damage her reputation. Noticing the warning in Han Hongyi's eyes, Han Shieling could only suppress his dissatisfaction for the time being. Looking at Han Shieling's repressed and resentful expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. She then turned around, too lazy to talk to Han Shieling. When Di Beichun saw the 4 palace masters and the great elder present, he couldn't help but chuckle. I didn't expect that today's assessment would attract everyone. What young lord is concerned about, we are naturally also very concerned. Xiao Hongzhen laughed aloud. He had been looking for an opportunity to take down Di Beichun. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't pass the assessment array today, it was naturally an excellent opportunity. Di Beichun glanced at Xiao Hongzhen indifferently. From the moment Xiao Hongzhen appeared here, he already understood what Xiao Hongzhen was planning. However, he believed in Hong Zhuang's strength. Just from Hong Zhuang's performance in the Bloody Abyss, he could see that Hong Zhuang never lacked courage, perseverance, and fighting strength. Although it was the first time she came into contact with the assessment array, he believed that Hong Zhuang would be able to do well. Chapter 1178. Di Beichun nodded, but the words he said were not consistent with Qin Ai's question. They are all good friends I met at the Kangling College. I think the 4 palace masters may not know that I'm also a student of the Kangling College's special enrollment class. With Di Beichun's voice falling, everyone was stunned for a moment. They looked at Di Beichun strangely. They really didn't know much about this matter. In fact, Di Beichun went to the Kangling College after returning to the sect. Before Di Beichun returned to the sect, everyone often paid attention to Di Beichun's movements. After Di Beichun had stood up again, they didn't need to pay as much attention as before. However, they didn't expect that Di Beichun would also become a student of the Kangling College's special enrollment class. This was really incredible. The people who had originally ridiculed the Kangling College for not being able to stand in public also shut their mouths after hearing Di Beichun's words. Even the young sect master was a student of the Kangling College. How could they dare to say anything bad about the Kangling College? Han Shilling's face was ugly. Big Brother Di's words were obviously protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, Di Beichun was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. He specifically emphasized the fact that Xia Jiqing and others were his friends so that everyone could not blame Bailey Hongzhuang. These people were invited by him and were also his friends. They had nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. If someone wanted to find trouble, they could just come to him. It turns out that the young sect master has also been to the Kangling College. The young sect master's friends are also friends of the Tiangang sect. Qin Ai smiled faintly. When he spoke, his eyes fell on Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi. He deliberately asked this question to prevent Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi from finding problems with him again. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi looked at Qin Ai coldly. Qin Ai was their stumbling block. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing, and the others also smiled after hearing Di Beichun's words. With Di Beichun around, things are indeed different. That Han Shieling can only obediently shut up. Xia Jiqing smiled and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, She was worried that Hong Zhuang would be bullied by Han Shilling here. Now that she saw how Di Beichun was protecting Bailey Hong Zhuang, she knew that no one could do anything to Hong Zhuang as long as Di Beichun was there. A bright smile appeared on her alluring face. It was like hundreds of flowers were blooming, gorgeous and beautiful. After seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang smile, the eyes of many cultivators present condensed on Bailey Hong Zhuang's body. Bailey Hong Zhuang's beauty could not be ignored by anyone. Originally, she just stood quietly and attracted everyone's attention. Now, looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's smile, everyone couldn't take their eyes off her. Their eyes were full of intoxication and shock. No wonder the young sect master likes Bailey Hong Zhuang. Such a woman, no man can resist her charm. Although Han Shilling is very beautiful compared with Bailey Hong Zhuang, there is still a big gap. The eyes of the male disciples present were full of admiration. Only as men, they understood the thoughts of the young sect master better. Listening to the emotions of the male disciples, Han Shilling's face became gloomy again. She was recognized by everyone as not as beautiful as Bailey Hong Zhuang. Chapter 1179. Young Master, since everyone is here, why don't we start first? Gu Jingqing suggested. Di Beichun nodded slightly, his noble and handsome face full of majesty. The qualification test for the assessment competition begins now. As Di Beichun's voice fell, the elder on the side immediately understood, and his eyes fell on the group of cultivators who were preparing for the assessment. If you want to qualify for the assessment competition, you need to pass through the assessment array. As long as you can persist in the assessment array for 3 incense sticks, you will be qualified. If it is less than 3 incense sticks, you will be disqualified. In this assessment array, you will be in the mountains, and all kinds of monsters will appear. You need to deal with them on your own. Once you die in the illusion, you will automatically withdraw from the assessment array. Is there anything you don't understand? The elder concisely explained the situation of the assessment array. Many foreign cultivators didn't understand what the assessment array was, so it was necessary to introduce its functions. No, everyone shook their heads. They had a certain understanding of the assessment array from various channels before, but they had never really seen it. Now, 5 people in a group enter the assessment array. As the elder's voice fell, the 5 cultivators at the front hesitated for a moment before walking into the assessment array. They only saw the elder put a spirit stone next to the assessment array, and then the array started. Everyone only saw a ray of light enveloping the 5 people in the array, and from the facial expressions of these cultivators, they could see that they had fallen into the illusion array. The situation inside the assessment array is really bloody and violent. When I entered the assessment array for the first time, I was scared out of my wits. Yes, especially the first time you went in, your results were the worst. It is not easy to persist for 3 incense sticks. Although the strength of the cultivators who can come to the sect for the qualification test is good, there are not many cultivators who represent the sect to participate in the assessment competition every year. I think this time will be no exception. I'm most curious about what results Bailey Hong Zhuang and the group of cultivators from the Azure Water School will get. If the duration is too short, it will be embarrassing. Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others were sizing up the situation of the cultivators in the assessment array when the discussions of the surrounding cultivators gradually entered their ears. After all, their appearance today was already a hot topic. After hearing these words, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look dignified. Before coming to Tiangang sect, they didn't think too much about the problem. They just felt that this was a good opportunity. However, after facing the current situation, they realized that everything was not that simple. Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun were also under a lot of pressure to be able to come here for the assessment. If their performance today was bad, not only would they be laughed at by everyone, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun would also be implicated by them. This was not something they wanted to see. Gong Shaoqing, Dong Fengyu, and the others looked at each other. They all felt the existence of this pressure. In a situation where no one was optimistic about them, they could only encourage themselves. Only if they performed well enough would they be able to shut all these cultivators up. Chapter 1180. Survival of the fittest was the rule of the Shengxian continent. All respect must be earned with their own strength. They must work hard to obtain the qualifications to participate in the assessment competition, not only for themselves, but also for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, for their trust. Everyone's hearts were filled with anger. Even if everyone was not optimistic about them, they would believe in their own strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. She didn't think that these cultivators would keep saying such things. In fact, when Di Beichun first proposed it, she did not think that there would be such problems. Now, listening to the ridicule of these cultivators, she only felt that it was particularly harsh, and she also felt sorry for Xia Jiqing and the others. If it were not for her inviting Jiqing and the others to come to Tiangang's sect together, they would not have to endure such humiliation. I'm sorry for everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, her delicate face full of guilt. You don't need to pay attention to these words. Just pretend you didn't hear it for the time being. Don't feel pressure. These remarks were not something she could stop as soon as she opened her mouth. She did not want Xia Jiqing and the others to bear all the unnecessary pressure because of her. Hongzhuang, this is not your fault. You don't have to apologize. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing was the first to answer. That's right. These words aren't completely targeted at us. Even other cultivators would have heard similar words under such circumstances. Dongfang Yu's face was filled with a gentle smile. Obviously, he did not put these problems in his eyes. We're not so fragile. Gong Xiaoqing's voice followed. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes and saw that Xia Jiqing and the others' faces were all showing an indifferent smile. Her worried heart was completely put down. Indeed, she underestimated the strength of Gong Xiaoqing and the others' hearts. Immediately afterward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the assessment array again. As time gradually passed, everyone noticed that the faces of the cultivators in the assessment array gradually turned pale, and beads of sweat gradually appeared on their foreheads. Their expressions were also different from each other. Some of them gritted their teeth and persevered, while others had looks of fear on their faces. Beside the test array, an incense stick was burning continuously. There was also a cultivator who was paying attention to the incense stick. Once it burned out, he would immediately light up the second incense stick. Look, the cultivator on the left can't hold on any longer. A cultivator's voice suddenly rang out. As the voice rang out, everyone looked at the cultivator on the left. They saw that the cultivator's face was getting paler and paler, and his eyes were filled with intense fear. Following that, the cultivator suddenly exited the assessment formation. He panted heavily and fell heavily to the ground with a pale face. A cultivator immediately walked to the cultivator's side and said, "It's all right now. Wake up." Hearing this, the cultivator was stunned for a moment. After seeing the surrounding cultivators, he revealed a look of understanding. However, the fear in his eyes did not disappear. Clearly, he had encountered something extremely frightening. How long did I last? After resting for a while, the cultivator remembered the most important thing and could not help but ask. Chapter 1181. After knowing that he had only persisted for a stick of incense's time, the cultivator's face immediately became ugly. To qualify for the assessment, one needed to persist in the assessment array for 3 sticks of incense's time. However, he only persisted for a stick of incense's time. When he turned his head, he found that he was the first cultivator who could not hold on. For a time, feeling the eyes of everyone again, the cultivator only felt his face turn red. He was full of confidence before, but he did not expect his strength to be so weak. It seems that the scene seen in the assessment is really terrifying. This cultivator is scared to such an extent. Xia Jiqing's face was full of emotion. She believed that the cultivators who had reached this step would have a lot of experience. It could even scare him to such an extent. It could be seen how terrifying the scene he encountered was. We are likely to face the scene of our own death. His reaction is not strange. The dark eyes flashed with wisdom. There is nothing more terrifying than one's own death. In the face of one's own death, no matter which cultivator, it was impossible to let go. Xia Jiqing suddenly realized that if it was really such a situation, then it was really difficult to deal with. Not long after the first cultivator came out, another cultivator also withdrew from the assessment array. The reaction of this cultivator was the same as the first cultivator, and even when he withdrew, there was a scream. If the disciples of Tian Gangzong did not immediately go forward to remind this cultivator, it was afraid that this cultivator would not have recovered for a while. It is really not easy to participate in the assessment array. In less than 2 sticks of incense's time, 2 cultivators were eliminated. Cui Haoyan's eyes were filled with a trace of amazement. These cultivators were different from them. They had the opportunity to come to Tian Gangzong to participate in the assessment array because they knew Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, these cultivators had the opportunity to represent Tian Gangzong to participate in the assessment array. It could be seen that their strength was definitely not weak. However, these cultivators could not pass, and the pressure on them was even greater. With Cui Haoyan's voice falling, Gong Shaoqing and the others did not speak, but their expressions became more dignified. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array. Only 2 cultivators remained. As the second incense stick burned out, everyone could guess the result in their hearts. 2 out of 5 cultivators were qualified to participate in the assessment competition. This was a good result. However, just as the second incense stick was about to burn out, one of the cultivators was forced to retreat. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. This cultivator was just a little bit away from obtaining the qualifications. They didn't expect that he would fail at the last moment. It was truly too unfortunate. This cultivator's eyes were filled with annoyance when he realized that he had missed the opportunity by a hair's breadth. Compared to the 3 cultivators who had failed earlier, he was undoubtedly the most depressed one. In the end, only one of the 5 cultivators managed to hold on for the duration of 3 incense sticks. However, this cultivator exited the assessment array not long after the 4th incense stick was lit. After this cultivator knew that he had succeeded, his face was pale, but his expression was filled with pride and joy. This was the embodiment of strength. Chapter 1182. The second batch of cultivators enter the assessment array. After the end of the first round of assessment, the elder's voice was heard. Immediately after, the second batch of cultivators immediately entered the assessment array and began the assessment. The results of the second batch of cultivators were slightly better than the first batch of cultivators. 2 cultivators were qualified. Every cultivator who was qualified to participate in the assessment stood at the side and received the envious gazes of the crowd. This was the treatment enjoyed by the victors. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest stood quietly at the back. They came relatively late, so they took the assessment very late. After waiting for a while, it was finally their turn. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest and said, "Let's go in first." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other and nodded immediately. "Good luck." Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng nodded. "We will." Immediately after, the 2 of them walked into the assessment array with the other 3 cultivators. As Cui Haoyan and Lu Xian took part in the assessment, the surrounding cultivators were all watching their performance. They wanted to know how the 2 of them would fare. Chapter 1183. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were filled with an incredible look. But I feel like I've been in there for a long time. She only felt that she had been in the assessment array for a long time. She didn't expect that it was only a stick of incense worth of time. It really gave her a big blow. After really understanding the situation in the assessment array, she understood how difficult it was to persist for 3 sticks of incense worth of time. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing helped Zhang Yunfeng up. Although this result was not what they had expected, they had no other choice at this point. Seeing Zhang Yunfeng being the first to be eliminated, Han Shiling's lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. He immediately looked at Tao Songrong next to him. Tao Songrong immediately understood and immediately chuckled. I said that the strength of the cultivators of the Kangling College is not good enough. The first to be eliminated, I thought they were great. As Tao Songrong took the lead to talk about this issue, the surrounding cultivators also nodded. Yes, although the Kangling College has a good reputation in the dynasty, it is still not good enough here. Zhang Yunfeng was the first to be eliminated. In my opinion, the performance of the other cultivators of the Kangling College will not be much better. Listening to the ridicule of the crowd, Zhang Yunfeng's face was ugly to the extreme. There was also a hint of shame. She really didn't expect such a situation. I'm sorry, I implicated everyone, Zhang Yunfeng said with shame. She wanted to perform well for herself, for the Kangling College, and for her friends. She didn't expect her performance to be so bad, implicating everyone to be ridiculed by others. Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's ashamed appearance, everyone quickly said, "This is nothing. You don't have to take it to heart." However, at this moment, Cui Haoyin and another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array at the same time. Both of them had persisted for 2 sticks of incense worth of time. There was still a long time before the 3rd stick of incense burned out. Cui Haoyin's face was also pale, but he quickly recovered his consciousness. After learning that he had never heard of the assessment, his face was a little ugly. One after another, in my opinion, the cultivators of the Kangling College will not be able to pass. Han Shiling's mouth evoked a sneer. It seemed that she really had a good show to watch today. Just from a situation of Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yunfeng, she could predict the fate of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not pass, or the cultivators of the Kangling College were all wiped out, then she wanted to see how arrogant Bailey Hongzhuang could be. Even if Brother D was willing to protect her, she would still be despised by everyone. Young Master, the cultivators of the Kangling College. Xiao Hongjin felt a burst of joy in his heart, but on the surface, he pretended to be very helpless. He couldn't help but look at Di Bei Chun. D. Young Master, even if you have a good relationship with them, as the young master, you can't be too emotional. Jiang Yi sighed, his words revealing the meaning of teaching Di Bei Chun how to do things. Palace Master Xiao, Palace Master Jiang, this assessment is not yet the end. You don't have to worry, Qin AI slowly said. Chapter 1184. Looking at Di Beichen's indifferent look, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's eyes showed a trace of displeasure, but they did not continue to say anything. In their opinion, Di Beichen was just putting up a strong front. Later, once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others failed, it would be even more difficult for Di Beichen to step down. Young Sect Master, in my opinion, you seem to be too protective of Bailey Hongzhuang, right? At this moment, a man arrived late and slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. With the appearance of this man, everyone's eyes fell on him, and their expressions revealed a somewhat unusual meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed this man. She saw that the man was wearing a black robe, and his age was about the same as Di Beichen's. He was handsome and could be said to be romantic and elegant, but there was still a big gap between his appearance and Di Beichen's evildoers. However, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that a malicious light flashed inadvertently in this man's eyes. Even if his romantic and elegant appearance concealed it very well, the moment he saw Di Beichen, this malicious light still uncontrollably showed itself. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang had already confirmed the man's identity, Ji Yangxia. Earlier, she had already heard that Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi had been constantly finding trouble with Di Beichen, wanting to push Di Beichen down from the position of young sect master in order to push Ji Yangxia to the position of young sect master. However, she had never seen Ji Yangxia since she came to Tianyang sect. She did not expect to see him on such an occasion. This Ji Yangxia is really arrogant. Even Di Beichen came early, but he still dares to come late. Xiao He frowned. Just looking at Ji Yangxia's smile made it feel uncomfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. This guy deliberately came late. Di Beichen's sudden return must have given him a big blow. She could imagine how glorious Ji Yangxia was in Tiangang's sect when Di Beichen was not around. However, once Di Beichen returned, Ji Yangxia no longer regained his original position. It was tantamount to suddenly falling from the clouds. Today, Ji Yangxia had appeared again, presumably to laugh at them. Speaking of which, these two temple masters and Ji Yangxia were all menacing. That's true, Xiaobai chuckled. When the tiger is not around, the monkey is king. When Di Beichen comes later, Ji Yangxia will be beaten back to his original state. Ji Yangxia slowly walked in front of Di Beichen. Although he called Di Beichen young sect master, his arrogant appearance showed that he was not really convinced. Everyone looked at Di Beichen and Ji Yangxia. The conflict between these two people was well known in Tiangang's sect. Now that Ji Yangxia was the first to make trouble, no one knew how the young sect master would solve it. Di Beichen glanced at Ji Yangxia indifferently. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile again, and his expression was somewhat disdainful. As soon as she saw Di Beichen's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Ji Yangxia was going to suffer a blow. What does it have to do with you that I'm protecting my wife? Di Beichen looked at Ji Yangxia lazily. His low and magnetic voice was full of impudence and dominance. It was just Ji Yangxia. If it were not for the support of the two temple masters, he would have completely crippled him. At this time, Ji Yangxia still dared to take the initiative to find trouble with him. He was simply courting death. Chapter 1185. Ji Yangxia's face instantly became ugly, as if he couldn't understand why Di Beichen was so arrogant today. Previously, even though Di Beichen had swiftly and decisively regained the position of a young lord, but due to the pressure of the two palace lords, he had never directly confronted him. What was going on today? For a moment, Ji Yangxia was a little embarrassed. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi's faces also changed a little. Di Beichen's performance today was indeed a little unusual. However, on second thought, the two felt that it was very likely that Di Beichen had to say this because of the failure of the Kanglin College's cultivators. Young sect master, aren't you going a little too far with your words? Xiao Hongzhen spoke slowly. His words were filled with the intention of awakening someone. Di Beichen glanced at Xiao Hongzhen indifferently. Does Temple Master Xiao have a problem with me? As soon as these words came out, Xiao Hongzhen was stunned again. Was Di Beichen going to take the initiative to provoke a conflict today? Not only Xiao Hongzhen, but even Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also couldn't understand Di Beichen. They also understood that Di Beichen wanted to get rid of Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi, but the two had been in Tiangang's sect for too long, and their positions were too stable. It was obviously impossible to uproot them immediately. However, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, they would definitely be able to get rid of them completely. Young sect master, what you said is too serious, Jiang Yi immediately said. However, Di Beichen didn't give any face to these two people at all. I'm a young lord. You only need to listen to my orders. As for my decisions, it's not up to the two temple masters to question. As for Ji Yangxia, he's just an ordinary cultivator in my Tiangang sect. How dare he have a problem with me? In my opinion, you don't want to stay in Tiangang's sect anymore, do you? The low and magnetic voice was full of domineering as usual. Di Beichen's expression was gentle and lazy. Even when he said such words, he still seemed to be talking about the good weather today. It wasn't that he couldn't uproot the two temple masters from Tiangang's sect before, but they were both promoted by his master. On the one hand, he had to worry about his master. Now, all these problems no longer existed, and he didn't need to be polite. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present couldn't help but open their mouths and looked at Di Beichen in horror. Di Beichen was actually going to expel Ji Yangxia from Tiangang's sect directly? Jiang Xia's face was as gloomy as water. He could no longer maintain his previous elegant smile. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. He did not understand why Di Beichun had become completely different after his return. Young sect master, I've always treated Jiang Xia as my own son. What do you think of me by saying this? Xiao Hongjin hurriedly spoke out, his expression full of displeasure. T's. Temple. T's. T's S. T. S's. Don't tell me. You think Tiangang sect is yours? I respect you because you're a founding member of Tiangang sect. Don't take advantage of your seniority. Di Beichun's voice was light, but the words he said didn't give Xiao Hongjin and the others any face. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other, and their eyes were full of amazement. Chapter 1186. Xia Jiqing, Dongfang Yu, and the others all looked at Di Beichun in amazement. On ordinary days, Di Beichun was always very kind when he was with them. At this moment, seeing Di Beichun like this, they really understood the power of the sect's young sect master. His casual attitude and arrogant and unruly words were simply shocking. Di Beichun is really too handsome. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with worship. She had previously felt that Di Beichun was very domineering, but now it seemed that her previous thoughts were too simple. This is the power of Di Beichun. These annoying guys dare to question Di Beichun. They really deserve it. Zhang Yinfeng clapped her hands and cheered. Even if she didn't know the internal situation of Tiangang sect, she knew that these guys were definitely not good things. Bailey Hongzhuang still had a cloud-like appearance. Her rose-colored lips evoked an enchanting arc. It seemed that Di Beichun had already begun to make his move. These old guys were no different from the cancer of Tiangang sect. If Di Beichun really wanted to sit in the position of Tiangang sect, he needed to remove these tumors one by one. The atmosphere became stiff for a while, and even the assessment of the last group was suspended. The disciples of Tiangang sect were all looking at each other. They had never seen the contradiction between the young sect master and the palace master. Today, only felt that they worshipped Di Beichun even more. Han Shiling's eyes also showed a look of worship and admiration. This was the big brother Di she had always worshipped. No matter what the situation was, Big Brother Di always had a kind of domineering and arrogance that other men couldn't match, making people intoxicated. Taking advantage of his seniority. When Xiao Hongjin was crowned with these words by Di Beichun, he could no longer keep calm. Di Beichun trampled on his dignity in front of everyone. If he was criticized by Di Beichun today, how could he maintain the majesty in front of the disciples in the future? Di Beichun, Xiao Hongjin's face was full of anger, and he didn't even call him young sect master anymore. I watched you grow up from a child to the present. Since the sect master left, I have helped you take charge of Tiangang sect. No matter what, I am your elder. If the sect master knows that you have become like this after growing up, the sect master will be very disappointed. Yes, even if you grow up, you can't forget your roots. Jiang Yi followed up. Since Di was so, they would teach Di Beichun a lesson in public. Di Beichun's majesty would also be dealt a big blow to Di's majesty. Di's majesties. Di Beichun S would woots. Ji's yang. Esli Yang's his was wondering how Di would. S's response? Di's Beichun's was put. This was making Beichun's Beichun, wasn't his him? He's Beichun's this. No matter what, Di Beichun would end up with a reputation of not respecting his elders. However, in the face of Xiao Hongjin's and Jiang Yi's accusations, Di Beichun's lips curled into a cold smile. Over the years, he had long been tired of these two fellows' actions of taking advantage of their seniority. When Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing saw that the situation was so rigid, they wanted to speak up to ease the tension. Just then, a vicissitude and majestic voice suddenly sounded from behind. I didn't know that I needed Palace Master Xiao to help Beichun manage Tiangang sect on my behalf. Chapter 1187. Sect Leader. Someone took the lead and shouted. Then, everyone bowed and saluted. Greetings, Sect Leader. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other. They did not expect the Sect Leader to suddenly return. Before this, none of them knew about this news. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's faces instantly turned ugly. They simply could not believe what they were seeing. The Sect Leader had really returned. In the past 4 years, there had been no news of the Sect Leader. They had also inquired for a long time, but it was as if the Sect Leader had disappeared from this world after leaving. Before the Sect Leader left, they had been very concerned about this matter. However, as time gradually passed, they had also forgotten about this matter. Now, they only hoped that the Sect Leader would never return. After all, there is a certain amount of risk when a cultivator was looking for an opportunity to break through. Some strong cultivators had fallen while looking for a breakthrough. This was also a common occurrence. They didn't expect the Sect Master to suddenly return. Moreover, he appeared after they said such words. Almost in a short moment, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi understood that this was a trap set by Di Beichen. The reason why Di Beichen had acted like this before was to provoke them and make them say such outrageous things. Now that the Sect Leader had appeared and heard what they had said, he would undoubtedly be very angry. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi both stared coldly at Di Beichen. They did not expect that Di Beichen had become so calculative after not seeing him for a while. The complacency in Ji Yangxia's eyes dissipated in an instant and was replaced by a thick fear. He was about the same age as Di Beichen. He knew how much the Sect Leader doted on Di Beichen. When the Sect Leader was not around, his master and the others did not push him to the position of young Sect Leader. After the Sect Leader returned, he was completely out of luck with the position of young Sect Leader. Originally, he did not take Di Beichen's words seriously because there were 2 temple masters here. Di Beichen could not expel him from Tiangang's sect. However, now that the Sect Leader had returned, he might even have seen his previous performance clearly. Under such circumstances, even his master could not protect himself, let alone him. Situ Yin slowly walked over. Even though he did not say anything, the aura of a superior lingered in the air. It was the first time for many Tiangang sect disciples to see the sect master in person. They all looked at Situ Yin curiously. After Situ Yin walked to the side of Di Beichen and the others, the 4 palace masters bowed together. Greetings, Sect Master. Master, Di Beichen called out. Situ Yin waved his hand slightly. His gaze then fell on Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi. His weathered and dignified face revealed a faint smile. I didn't know that the 2 hall masters would spend so much effort while I was away from Tiangang's sect. Even though Situ Yin said it casually, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi could hear the anger in his words. They quickly knelt down and said, Sect Master, we just spoke carelessly before. We didn't mean it. I hope Sect Master can forgive us. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi were both sweating profusely. They dared to treat Di Beichen like that, but they absolutely did not dare to face Situ Yin. Situ Yin glanced at the 2 of them indifferently, spoke carelessly. Chapter 1188. Although many cultivators didn't know the attitude of the 2 temple masters towards Di Beichen, they could tell that the 2 temple masters didn't treat Di Beichen well based on their previous performance. What's more, as the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichen was forced to leave Tiangang's sect for 2 years. This was something everyone knew. Previously, everyone thought that if the sect master hadn't left, Di Beichen wouldn't have been forced to leave. Now that Di Beichen had returned, and the sovereign had also returned, she was afraid that the days of the 2 palace masters would not be easy. Di Beichen is the young sect master of Tiangang's sect. No matter what you say, you can't disobey the young sect master. Situ Yin spoke bluntly. He also knew the situation Di Beichen was facing. Now, it seemed that the situation was much more serious than he thought. Hearing the reproach in Situ Yin's words, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's hearts sank. Situ Yin's sudden appearance today was tantamount to giving them a head-on blow. All their previous plans turned into bubbles with Si Tuyin's appearance. When they thought of everything they had done before, they only felt that a great disaster was imminent. Si Tuyin was never a simple person to be able to become the sect master. Di Beichen's swift and decisive means were largely influenced by Si Tuyin. Don't look at Si Tuyin's kind appearance. When he was ruthless, he was cruel. I don't know. During the time I was away, Tiangang's sect didn't value status, but seniority. Si Tuyin looked at Xiao Hongjin and Jiang meaningfully. Before he left, he never thought that Xiao Hongjin and Jiang would be so bold to do such a thing. Just looking at the situation in front of him, he could imagine the suffering Di Beichen had suffered over the years. Speaking of which, he also felt that he owed Di Beichen a lot. Sect Master, we didn't mean that. Xiao Hongjin braced himself to explain. If this was confirmed, then their following days would be really difficult. What does that mean? Si Tuyin had no intention of giving Xiao Hongjin a way out. At this point, the selfishness of Xiao Hongjin and Si Tuyin could not be more obvious. All the explanations were just lame cover-ups. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Si Tuyin, who was so resolute. Her eyes lit up with joy. She was wondering why Si Tuyin hadn't shown himself even though he was messing around. It turned out that he was waiting for an opportunity to make things difficult for Xiao Hongjin. If Xiao Hongjin and the other two had known about the sect master's return, they would have done everything they could to cover up what they had done. As a result, they were able to find fault with the two of them, making it much easier to deal with them. Sect Master, Jiang wanted to explain, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. This was because he simply could not find a reason to cover up all of this. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also looked at Xiao Hongjin and Gu Jingqing indifferently. Speaking of which, the two of them had brought this upon themselves. Ji Yangxia lowered his head. Once the two temple masters were punished, he wouldn't have a good ending either. Si Tuyin raised his right hand and stopped Jiang Yi. The two of you go back and think about it. Prepare for the punishment. Chapter 1189. Even though Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi were very unwilling, they did not dare to disobey Si Tuyin. They could only leave the assessment array under everyone's strange gazes. After Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi left, Di Beichen's gaze quietly fell on Ji Yangxia. Over the years, although Ji Yangxia did not go as far as Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi, he still had a lot of sarcastic remarks. Now it was time to pay them back double. Feeling Di Beichen's gaze, Ji Yangxia could not help but feel a chill from the bottom of his feet, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. In the next moment, Ji Yangxia no longer hesitated and hurriedly left behind Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi. With the departure of Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi, the atmosphere also eased a little. Dongfang Yu's handsome face showed a look of amazement. I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to see the sect master of Tiangang's sect. This time it was really worth it. The sect master, how many people did not have the opportunity to see him? Even the cultivators of the sect may not have the opportunity to see the sect master. Dongfang Yu did not expect that he would have the opportunity to see him today, and to see such a wonderful scene. Han Shiling's eyes also lit up after seeing Si Tuyin return, and his heart was filled with indescribable joy. She was also very dissatisfied with Ji Yangxia. No matter what, Ji Yangxia could not be compared to Di Beichen. There was only one successor of Tiangang's sect, and that was Di Beichen. Since Di Beichen did not listen to everyone's words, then he would definitely listen to the sect master's words. In this way, as long as the sect master was dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang, then all the problems would be solved. Thinking of this, Han Xiling only felt that the clouds had finally parted and the moon had seen the light. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang could really give up. Han Hongyi and Han Xiling walked in front of Si Tuyin together and bowed to him, Sect Master. Si Tuyin nodded slightly, put away his original seriousness, and his expression returned to indifference. Since it's over, let's continue with the test, Si Tuyin said with a smile. Hearing that, Everyone's gaze finally landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. All the cultivators before them had already completed their assessment. Only Bailey Hongzhuang and the other four had yet to undergo their assessment. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing, and the others looked at each other. In this round of assessment, they must do their best to pass. Han Xiling's gaze also landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. She could only blame Bailey Hongzhuang's bad luck. Sect Master had just returned, and she had to make a fool of herself in front of him. She would like to see how Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to make the sect leader fall in love with her after failing this test. The test begins. The elder's voice rang out, and he immediately put a spirit stone into the array. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichun, and Di Beichun also looked at her. His eyes, as deep as the sea, rippled with trust and affection. He had never doubted Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She would definitely pass this test. Han Xiling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun affectionately looking at each other, and her heart was filled with jealousy. She kept thinking about how she would ridicule Bailey Hongzhuang when Bailey Hongzhuang failed so that the sect leader would not like her. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to enter the assessment array, the sect leader's voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 1190. As Si Tuyen's voice fell, everyone looked at Si Tuyen in astonishment, their faces full of disbelief. What was this situation? Could it be that the sovereign had already seen Bailey Hongzhuang? Looking at Si Tuyen's loving smile, it seemed that he was very satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Xiling's face turned green after Si Tuyen said this sentence, and his whole person stood in place in a daze. This was simply an impossible thing. Could it be that the sovereign felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Big Brother Di were a good match? Han Hongyi was also a little surprised, but his face did not show the slightest clue. Just from Si Tuyen's attitude, he could judge a lot of things. It seemed that Di Beichun and the others had already known the news of the sovereign's return, but the sovereign had never appeared in front of others. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other, and there was a happy and excited effect on their faces. From the day Han Xiling clamored in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, because of her identity, they were a little worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be liked by the sovereign. The relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun was so good. If the sovereign looked down on Bailey Hongzhuang's background and forcibly separated them, it was something that none of them wanted to see. Now it seemed that the sovereign not only did not look down on Bailey Hongzhuang, but on the contrary, he liked Bailey Hongzhuang very much. How can a sovereign be like this? Tao Tsongrong's eyes were full of puzzlement. How can you do this to Miss? Han Xiling glared fiercely at Tao Tsongrong. From the moment the sovereign said this sentence, she had become a joke in the eyes of everyone. Tao Tsongrong was now really touching the pot that did not boil. So, wouldn't it be a joke? In fact, as Han Xiling expected, the eyes of a group of cultivators fell on Han Xiling, revealing a little pity, a little sympathy, and a little irony. It turns out that the sovereign is also very satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. No wonder the young sovereign would bring Bailey Hongzhuang back. So, Bailey Hongzhuang is the young sovereign's wife of our Tiangang sect? Isn't this nonsense? It's already a done deal. Everyone's heart sighed. Bailey Hongzhuang was really a strong presence in Tiangang sect, completely squeezing Han Xiling out of place. For an ordinary cultivator to do this, it was simply impossible according to common sense. Now it seemed that this Bailey Hongzhuang had also established a legend. A warm and sweet smile appeared on the beautiful face. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Si Tuyen and then walked into the assessment array with Xia Jiqing and the others. As soon as the array started, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an energy surround her, and then the scene in front of her had become completely different. She had appeared in the mountains, and in front of her, a group of wind wolves were flashing with hungry blue light, apparently treating her as a meal on a plate. Faced with such a situation, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly calmed down. It seemed that the situation was the same as what Di Beichun said. The lapis lazuli sword appeared in her hand. It was exactly the same as the one in the real world. In this illusion, everyone would have their own weapon that they were most comfortable with. Almost in a short moment, those wind wolves rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang, wanted to swallow Bailey Hongzhuang into their belly. Chapter 1191. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure was like the wind, and her speed was extremely fast. She raised her sword, and these wind wolves died directly in her hands. After spending some time to completely deal with these wind wolves, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to move forward. After walking for a while, another wave of monsters appeared in front of her. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. In the face of the monsters, she was calm and indifferent, but the attacks in her hands were not slow at all. Bailey Hongzhuang found that every time she dealt with a wave of monsters, there would be more powerful monsters behind. However, this assessment array also had a flaw. As long as each wave of monsters persisted for a long time, it was possible to hold on for the time of 3 incense sticks. If they grasped this point, Xia Jiqing and the others were also likely to persist for the time of 3 incense sticks, but it was not known if they could find this point. For this situation, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. In the face of real danger, no matter what method was used, as long as one could persist for a moment, there would be a higher chance of survival. In fact, many cultivators would not be as calm as Bailey Hongzhuang when they first came into contact with the assessment array. She was able to find these problems while dealing with the monsters. Most of the cultivators just held the idea that they could survive one round after another. They did not deliberately delay the time, but because of their own cultivation, they had to slow down. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with excitement. Such an illusion array was really magical. Everything was no different from reality. If they could improve their combat level here, it was also an excellent way to practice. After 1,000 years, the sect array had made such great progress. All the cultivators' eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 in the assessment array. They were the last wave of cultivators to participate in the assessment. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang was such a hot topic, they also wanted to know if the woman the young lord liked was good or not. Han Shilling looked at all this coldly, only hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would fail quickly. However, as time passed, the first incense stick burned out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 did not show any abnormalities. The second incense stick was lit, and Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but have some sweat on their foreheads. But their youthful faces were still full of determination. Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Their defeat was mocked by the crowd. Since the result of their failure couldn't be changed, they could only hope that others would be able to persist until the end and fight for their school. Haoyan, do you think Gong Shaoqing and the others can hold on? Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were filled with nervousness. This feeling was more intense than any of her previous examinations. Cui Haoyan nodded slightly, his expression firm. I believe that they will be able to hold on until the end. Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang, you are stronger than them, especially Gong Shaoqing. As the number 1 student of the Azure Water School, there was absolutely no problem. Xia Jiqing's progress in this period of time was also very great. Not only that, her determination to participate in the assessment with Bailey Hongzhuang was unparalleled. With this determination, Xia Jiqing might be able to hold on. As for Bai Junyu, he relied on the power of love. Chapter 1192. When the second incense stick burned out and the third incense stick was lit, the faces of the onlookers could not help but change a little. It must be known that many cultivators who participated in the assessment before did not persist for such a long time. However, until now, none of the 5 people in Bailey Hongzhuang's group had been unable to hold on, which was somewhat unexpected. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng's faces showed a few traces of excitement. They only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 could persist until the end. Han Shilling saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 had persisted until now without any signs of defeat. Her face also changed a little. It was reasonable to say that with the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang's Orange Realm's second stage, she could persist for 3 incense sticks, but the cultivation of Xia Jiqing and the others were all in the Red Realm. It was absolutely difficult to persist for 3 incense sticks. In any case, some of the 5 should have withdrawn by now. Why did no one appear until now? After Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing saw this scene, there was a faint smile in their eyes. It seemed that the strength of the cultivators of the Kangling College was not weak. I didn't expect that these cultivators of the Kangling College could persist for such a long time. It's really unexpected. Do you think they will persist until the end? This is definitely impossible. The time of 3 incense sticks is not so easy to persist. It's not like you haven't tried this assessment array before. Everyone was talking about it, waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to withdraw from the assessment array. You know, the closer it was to the time of 3 incense sticks, the more difficult it was to continue. The time of 3 incense sticks was a hurdle. It was extremely difficult to persist until then. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 were immersed in the illusion and did not know the situation outside. The various monsters that appeared inside were overwhelming. Bailey Hongzhuang held the glass, sword like a goddess of death. Whenever a monster appeared, she would take the lead and rush up before the monster attacked. After the trial of the Blood Tower, her combat effectiveness had improved a lot, but her endurance had improved even more. Every bronze man did not know fatigue, and Bailey Hongzhuang naturally needed extraordinary endurance to fight with them. Under such an abnormal cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's endurance continued to improve, and the time she fought was also longer. If it was a cultivator of the same strength, they would not be able to stand it after such a long time, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to be tired. Her essence, qi, and spirit were still at their peak. This was the magical part of human cultivators. As long as they worked hard, nothing was impossible. Gradually, everyone noticed that the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others showed a nervous look. Large beads of sweat had covered their foreheads, but their tenacious expressions showed that they were still clenching their teeth and persevering. Gong Shaoqing's face was as cold as ever. His unchanging iceberg face did not change at all. Obviously, he was still at ease. Dongfang Yu's brows were tightly knitted. Although beads of sweat had seeped out his forehead, he still didn't show any signs of defeat. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing's demeanor was quite similar. Both of their faces were pale, and the way they clenched their teeth clearly showed that they were desperately holding on. Chapter 1193. That Xia Jiqing can't hold on any longer. Everyone's eyes fell on Xia Jiqing. Now there is only a third of the 3rd incense stick left. It was obviously impossible for Xia Jiqing to hold on until the 3rd incense stick burned out. Seeing this, Han Shiling's ugly face eased a little. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 succeeded in holding on for 3 incense sticks, then Bailey Hongzhuang would not only not lose face, but also gain face. This was not something she wanted to see. As long as one cultivator failed, the other cultivators were likely to be unable to hold on one after another. Oh no, Jiqing can't hold on anymore. What should we do? Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were full of worry. She knew how much Jiqing wanted to participate in the assessment with Hongzhuang. If Jiqing did not hold on, she could almost imagine Jiqing's state. For the sake of your obsession, you must persevere. Zhang Yunfeng put her hands together and kept saying in her heart, only hoping that Xia Jiqing could hold on. Xia Jiqing's hands trembled more and more. Just when everyone thought that Xia Jiqing could not hold on, Xia Jiqing's face suddenly changed. It was as if there was an inexplicable force encouraging her. Her expression became firm, and even her trembling hands stabilized a little. I can't fail. Xia Jiqing's heart kept shouting. She had been injured in the battle with the monsters, and there was an unspeakable pain in her body. However, she could not fail like this. If she could not hold on for a while in this illusion array, How could she enter the small world and fight side by side with Hong Zhuang? Under this huge obsession, Xia Jiqing once again stabilized. Looking at the sudden change in Xia Jiqing, all the cultivators present were stunned for a moment, and a strange color appeared on their faces. What is this situation? Xia Jiqing suddenly broke out. The third incense stick is almost burned out. These 5 people won't all pass, right? As the third incense stick gradually burned out, everyone only felt that it was incredible. This was too heaven-defying. There were 7 cultivators from Kangling College. Before 2 people were eliminated, this round of 5 people all passed. The gap was too big, right? However, as everyone guessed, when the third incense stick burned out and the fourth incense stick was lit, it told everyone the result was that all 5 people passed. Just as the fourth incense stick was lit, Xia Jiqing finally could not hold on and withdrew from the assessment array. Zhang Yinfeng immediately greeted her. Xia Jiqing's eyes were closed, her face was pale, and the sweat on her forehead was particularly distressing. "Jiqing, are you okay?" Zhang Yinfeng quickly asked. Xia Jiqing was concerned about another problem. "How long did I hold on?" She closed eyes. She did not dare to look at her results. She really did not want to fail. However, she had already done her best to persevere until the very last moment. Looking at Xia Jiqing's worried and nervous appearance, Zhang Yunfeng's face showed a smile and said, "3 incense sticks. You have passed." As Zhang Yunfeng's voice fell, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but be startled. "What did you say?" "I passed." Zhang Yinfeng nodded again and again. "Yes, if you don't believe me, you can see for yourself." Xia Jiqing opened her eyes. After seeing the 3 incense sticks that had burned out, her face could not help but show a strong joy. Chapter 1194. Xia Jiqing immediately stood up. The paleness on her face almost disappeared in a short time and was replaced by an indescribable excitement and joy. All the cultivators present only felt that Xia Jiqing was very cute after seeing her expression. How much did she want to participate in the assessment? Shortly after Xia Jiqing left the assessment array, Bai Junyu also left. After Bai Junyu left the assessment array, his state recovered very quickly. He immediately looked at the time, and after seeing that the 4th incense stick had been lit, he also felt relieved. After seeing that Xia Jiqing had left the assessment array, Bai Junyu couldn't help but ask with concern, "Jiqing, did you pass?" Xia Jiqing smiled and nodded. "Passed, we all passed." Compared to the joy of Xia Jiqing and the others, Han Shiling's face was already ugly to the extreme. Were these guys on steroids today? 5 people all passed. What kind of concept was this? The strength of the young master's friends is not bad. Qin Ai's face was filled with a faint smile as she congratulated. Di Beichen's lips curved into a confident and evil smile. The reason why he invited the special enrollment class cultivators was for 2 reasons. First, it was so that Hong Zhuang would not be lonely. Second, it was because he was also optimistic about the strength of the special enrollment class cultivators. From yesterday's drinking, he had already guessed today's result. The real situation was no different for what he thought. The 4th incense stick has been lit. There are still 3 cultivators persisting, but I don't know how long they can last. All 5 of them had obtained the qualifications to participate. The result was already set, but everyone was still curious about how long they could persist. After all, the longer they persisted, the stronger their fighting strength and the stronger their psychological quality. The further they went in the assessment array, the more monsters there were. In the face of that kind of situation, without enough psychological quality, it was impossible to persist. When the 4th incense stick burned 2/3, Dong Fengyu left the assessment array. When the 5th incense stick was lit, Gong Xiaoqing also left the assessment array. Looking at the results of the Azure Water School's cultivators, the contempt in everyone's eyes gradually disappeared. Their performance in the assessment array had already proved their strength. At least, they were not worse than the other selected cultivators. This passing ratio was already very amazing. At this moment, only Bailey Hongzhuang was left in the assessment array. Everyone couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't know how long Bailey Hongzhuang could last in this assessment array. So far, among the cultivators who participated in the assessment, there were cultivators who persisted until the fifth incense stick burned out. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang's results were already very good. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could survive the examination, her strength would increase by another level. At this moment, many cultivators believed in Di Beichen's choice. With Di Beichen's taste, the woman he liked would definitely not be bad. CTN looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing in the middle of the examination array, with a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. It seemed that this Bailey Hongzhuang was also a very hard-working girl. While everyone was sighing at Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, Bailey Hongzhuang was in the middle of a killing spree in the illusion array. This situation was very similar to when she fought against the Bronze Men. On the contrary, it might be easier to deal with these monsters. Yes. Chapter 1195. Even though the number of demonic beasts in front of her was shocking, Bailey Hongzhuang remained calm and did not feel any fear in her heart. In her previous life, the old man had told her not to worry about the number of opponents in front of her because the only ones who could exchange blows with her were the first wave. As for the rest, it was just a psychological effect. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang only focused on dealing with the demonic beasts in front of her. As for the demonic beasts behind her who were eyeing covetously, she did not care at all. She did not know when she would stop fighting. She only knew that she would not stop until the last moment. In a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang became the focus of everyone's attention. They only wanted to know how long Bailey Hongzhuang could hold on. Young miss, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to hold on for so long. Tao Tsongrong's face was a little ugly. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was outstanding, it would be harder for her young miss to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. One must know that back then, she was the one who went around telling the cultivators of Tiangang sect that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any ability and only had the ability to seduce others. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had used her own strength to wash away all of this. In comparison, the one who found it hard to step down was her. Hearing Tao Tsongrong's words, Han Shiling's face turned ugly. At this moment, she could not say anything other than staying silent. She only felt that this time, it would be really difficult for her to take down Bailey Hongzhuang. As the fifth incense stick was about to burn out, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to break the best record among the cultivators so far. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. The assessment of the assessment array had ended. However, on the other side, the fifth incense stick had not completely burned out. Seeing this scene, Han Shilling could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The longer Bailey Hongzhuang held on, the harder it would be for her to step down. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang did not become the best performer. However, soon the surrounding cultivators noticed that the situation was not right. Because Bailey Hongzhuang did not directly withdraw from the assessment array, but the assessment array ended automatically. This was very strange. Is there a problem with the assessment array? Why was Bailey Hongzhuang not ejected from the assessment array, but the assessment array closed automatically? I don't know, I have never seen such a situation. It is really strange. That's really a pity. Maybe Bailey Hongzhuang had a chance to surpass the best cultivator, but now that idea has been shattered. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Of course, the feeling of the first place and of the second place. In their eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, of Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, that Hongzhuang had missed out on the first place because of a problem with the assessment formation, it was depressing. Houses isn't too depressing? Xia Jiqing's eyes were full of displeasure. She subconsciously looked at Han Shilling. Could it be that someone did not like Hongzhuang, so they did something to the assessment array? Noticing Xia Jiqing's unkind eyes, Han Shilling also looked at Xia Jiqing coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang did not persist to the end. Could it be that she was to blame? Chapter 1196. Qin AI could not help but frown when she saw the situation in the assessment array. The assessment array ended on its own. Don't tell me that Miss Bailey passed all the assessments? As Qin AI's voice fell, Gu Jingqing could not help but glance at Qin AI. His eyes were filled with a trace of surprise. You're right. That's possible. There were many different assessments in the assessment array. When it was used to obtain a spot in the assessment competition, there were only a certain number of checkpoints in the assessment array, as the cultivator's abilities were generally not very strong. Normally, if one persisted for 6 incense sticks worth of time, one would be able to pass all the checkpoints. Once all the checkpoints were passed, the assessment array's assessment would naturally end. However, until now, there had never been a cultivator who could pass all the checkpoints on their first attempt at the assessment array. If Bailey Hongzhuang only used 5 incense sticks worth of time to pass all the checkpoints, how intense was her battle strength during this period of time? This meant that Bailey Hongzhuang only used 5 incense sticks worth of time to kill the beast that would normally take 6 incense sticks worth of time to kill. If that was the case, it would be too insane. Sect leader, young sect leader, the assessment has ended. The elder reported to Si Tian and Di Beichun slowly. Si Tian nodded slightly and looked at the cultivators who passed the assessment. Congratulations on passing the assessment and representing Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment competition. Hearing Si Tian's words, all the cultivators who were qualified to participate in the assessment smiled brightly. It was their honor to be able to hear the sect leader's congratulations. As usual, the cultivator who came in first in this assessment will receive a reward. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present looked at the cultivator who persisted for 5 incense sticks worth of time. Wu Yuexin, Orange Realm rank 4, was expected to win. Wu Yuexin smiled. Fortunately, she won first place in the end. Just as Wu Yuexin was ready to accept everyone's envy and congratulations, Si Tian's words made her smile freeze. Congratulations, Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichun's lips curled into a dazzling smile. His wife had always been outstanding, but her performance still surprised him. Qin AI and Gu Jingqing looked at each other. It seemed that their previous guess was not wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang had really completed all the trials at an extremely fast speed. As soon as Si Tu Yin finished speaking, the expressions of all the cultivators present turned grim. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. How could it be Bailey Hongzhuang? Wasn't it Wu Yuexin? I don't know. I don't know what's going on either. Could the sect master have made a mistake? Xia Jiqing, Gong Shaoqing, and the others looked at each other. Although there was an unspeakable joy in their hearts, they were also worried that they would be happy for nothing. If he really made a mistake, Hongzhuang would be even more embarrassed. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. She was still as indifferent as before. Sect Master, isn't Wu Yuexin in first place? Han Shilling couldn't help but ask. Would the Sect Master be biased towards Bailey Hongzhuang? Chapter 1197. Han Shilling rarely came to the assessment array, so she didn't know much about the situation of the assessment array. However, as the Great Elder, Han Hongyi knew the reason very well. Bailey Hongzhuang's current situation was that she had completely passed the assessment array. Naturally, she deserved to be first place. Following Han Shiling's voice, everyone's gaze fell on Han Shiling and Si Tuyen. In fact, many of them didn't know the answer to this question. Facing Han Shiling's question, Si Tuyen smiled faintly. Bailey Hongzhuang has already passed the assessment array. Who else could it be but her? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Bailey Hongzhuang has already passed the assessment array? Does this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang has already killed all the demonic beasts that appeared in the assessment array? That's why Bailey Hongzhuang hasn't been ejected from the assessment array? Oh my god, is this really Bailey Hongzhuang's first time taking part in the assessment array? Isn't this a little too abnormal? Until now, I have never seen a cultivator who could achieve such a result on their first use of the assessment array. The cultivators who didn't know what was going on all came to a sudden realization. After a short moment of disbelief, they were even more impressed. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang's current strength was still far from the young sect master's wife in their hearts, the potential that Bailey Hongzhuang had shown was already very outstanding. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was given a certain amount of time, Bailey Hongzhuang would also become a powerhouse. Han Shiling's face turned ugly. She began to regret asking this question. With the sect master's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed even more impressive. As for her, she grew up in Tiangang's sect since she was young, but she didn't even understand these questions. It was really embarrassing. There are still 7 days before the assessment competition begins. Everyone should prepare well. After 7 days, we will be taking part in the assessment competition. C2 Yin slowly said before he turned around and left. The two hall masters followed closely behind C2 Yin. They still needed some time to deal with Xiao Hongjin and Jiang. Di Beichen slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, a charming smile on his handsome face. You did well. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her chin slightly, her bright and beautiful face rippling with an enchanting smile. Of course. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others slowly walked towards the bedroom. Although Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin did not pass the test, today's result was already very good for them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to Di Beichen's quarters, but Di Beichen had something to do, so he did not return with them. Come to think of it, the way the two temple masters treated Di Beichen previously, it was time for Di Beichen to repay them. This time, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi, those two annoying fellows, are going to be unlucky. Baisher's eyes sparkled with excitement. Those two fellows had dared to make things difficult for its master. They were simply digging their own graves. Serves them right. Those two fellows were really arrogant. And that Ji Yangxia, I'm afraid that their intestines are green with regret now. Xiao He laughed. It's best to make these fellows disappear from Tiangang's sect. If they continue to stay in Tiangang's sect, they will only be black sheep. Hearing the three beasties' words, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Since Di Beichen has taken action, their punishment will not be light. Don't worry. Chapter 1198. Xia Jiqing was in a very good mood. She had been nervous all night yesterday. Today, she finally succeeded in qualifying for the competition. She only felt relaxed and no longer had to be so nervous. Gong Xiaoqing, Dongfang Yu, and Bai Junyu all had a faint smile on their faces. One must know that in the entire Shengxian continent, there were very few cultivators who could get a place. Their ability to get such a place had already proved their strength. However, after seeing Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin, who were in a very low mood, everyone could not help but feel sorry for them. If Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin could also participate in the assessment competition, that would be the best result. Yinfeng, don't be sad. It is also very good to cultivate outside. Xia Jiqing could not help but comfort her. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Zhang Yunfeng's mouth pulled out a smile and said, I'm fine, don't worry. Cui Haoyin glanced at the crowd and said, I'll go back to my room first. Everyone nodded. In such a situation, Cui Haoyin just wanted to be alone. Seeing Cui Haoyin leave, Zhang Yunfeng also said, I'll also go back to my room to rest. Yinfeng, looking at Zhang Yunfeng's situation, Xia Jiqing was about to say something, but Bailey Hongzhuang had already stopped her. Let them be alone. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Their friends had all been qualified to participate, but they had not. It was difficult for Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin to accept this matter. However, she believed that Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yinfeng were not discouraged people. Even if they lost this opportunity, as long as they continued to work hard, they would also achieve something in the future. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. She also knew that her persuasion had no effect at this time. There are still 7 days before we go to the small world. We have to start preparing the things we need to prepare quickly. After Di Beichen comes back, we will go to the trading market of Tiangang sect. The trading market would exist anywhere, and the cultivators of Tiangong sect often needed to purchase some other things. It was just that so far, she did not know where the trading market was, so she could only wait for Di Beichen to come back. Okay, Gong Xiaoqing nodded. They had to live in a small world for 2 years, so there were definitely a lot of things to prepare. When Di Beichen returned to his bedroom, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang refining pills. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's concentration and meticulous appearance, Di Beichen's heart trembled. Bailey Hongzhuang had an indescribable charm when she was serious. She was good at many things. Once she said what she was good at, many people would be surprised. His wife was destined to be the center of attention. Even if the unfair treatment at the beginning made Bailey Hongzhuang covered in dust, now Bailey Hongzhuang had begun to bloom with her own light. He believed that it wouldn't be long before Bailey Hongzhuang would become something that would amaze everyone. Seeing Di Beichen appear, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her attention was still focused on the pills in the furnace. As a cultivator, it was possible for him to use pills at any time and place. She was about to go to the small world. If she did not prepare more, she would not have such good conditions. Chapter 1199. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang finished refining the elixir and sat down beside Di Beichen. Is the matter settled? A faint smile appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. She could feel that Di Beichen was in a good mood. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish smile as he nodded slightly. It's settled. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't ask any more questions. From a moment Di Beichen said that it was settled, it meant that the two temple masters and Ji Yangxia were no longer a threat to him. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang was still smiling. She thought that Di Beichen would need some time to solve these problems. She didn't expect that he would be able to get rid of these threats in such a short time. My wife, the disciples of the Tiangong sect, are all saying that I have good taste. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile and a proud expression. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. Her clear and bright eyes were filled with a bright smile. How did you know? With Di Beichen's status, even if the disciples were to talk about it, they wouldn't talk about it in front of Di Beichen. He Mu told me. Di Beichen shrugged and was very calm. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. He Mu had always been very concerned about her relationship with Di Beichen. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was beautiful with every frown and smile, Di Beichen slowly held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. His black eyes were filled with deep affection. My wife, I can't accompany you to participate in the assessment. You have to be careful in these 2 years. Di Beichen's voice was low and depressed. He didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to be separated from him. Whenever he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang going through unknown dangers in a place where he couldn't see, he felt a pang of heartache. However, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to become stronger. She still had too many things to do. As a man who loved her, he couldn't confine her under his wings. His wife should always be the center of attention. Her dusty life didn't belong to him. He was willing to wait for her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up and saw Di Beichen's eyes. Her heart trembled. She couldn't bear to part with him. I will. There are all kinds of dangers in the examination. I'm always worried if I'm not by your side. Di Beichen's handsome brows furrowed. If it was possible, he really wanted to go in with Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I will take good care of myself. 2 years later, you will see a stronger me. Her deep eyes flashed with determination. She would grow up as soon as possible and defeat Han Xiling in front of everyone. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look, Di Beichen reached out and stroked her silky black hair. This woman whom he wanted to protect with all his life had to become stronger. As long as Hongzhuang wanted to do something, he would support her. I will wait for your return. Di Beichen's smile was elegant and warm. His eyes flashed with a deep affection that could make any woman drown. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled when he said that he would wait for her return. From the time they met until now, Di Beichen had always protected her and accompanied her to do everything she wanted to do. If it wasn't for accompanying her, Xiao Hongjin and the others wouldn't have been able to do whatever they wanted in Tiangang sect for so long. And she had always been doing what she wanted to do. Now that she thought about it, she only felt guilty. Beichun, Chapter 1200. Needless to say, I understand. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with understanding. He felt sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang, because she had no choice but to become stronger. If he knew that his biological parents were in such a situation, he would also try his best to become stronger. Because it was a blood feud. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang's persistence, and he would help Bailey Hongzhuang to complete all of this. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a warm feeling in her heart. How lucky she was to meet Di Beichun in the vast sea of people. I love you. 1,000 words could not compare to a single I love you. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichun, her clear eyes filled with emotion and affection. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then his starry eyes were filled with deep surprise, joy, and even ecstasy. That pair of deep and enchanting eyes instantly blossomed with boundless light. It was like a resplendent river of stars, gorgeous and magnificent. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. He had never heard Bailey Hongzhuang confess so affectionately. He only felt the blood in his body surging, and his whole body became light. Wife, I love you even more. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up, and the two smiled at each other. Their eyes were filled with love that only the other party could understand. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's love and affection, Han Shiling's mood was extremely bad. Whoosh! Bang! Han Shiling smashed all the tea sets on the table to the ground, and her cold and delicate face could not hide the sullen expression. Damn it! Tiangang sect was obviously her home ground, but now Bailey Hongzhuang had stolen all the limelight. This was simply intolerable. She originally thought that all the cultivators in Tiangang sect should support her, but they were simply a bunch of guys who changed their sails according to the wind. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang had only achieved good results in the assessment array. Everyone began to praise Bailey Hongzhuang for being outstanding. Brother D had good taste. Were these things? Han Shiling only felt that the anger of jealousy was about to burn her to ashes. She just wanted to destroy everything. Looking at Han Shiling's appearance, Tao Tsongrong's face also showed a worried expression. Miss, don't get angry and harm your health. Han Shiling glared at Tao Tsongrong. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang is going to ride on my head, how can I not be angry? But young miss, it's not worth it if you hurt your health because of this. However, Han Shiling simply did not care about what Tao Tsongrong said. She continued to smash things. Only in this way could she vent the anger in her heart. She thought that she was the proud daughter of Tiangang sect, but now she was suppressed by an unknown girl like Bailey Hongzhuang. If this spread out, it would simply be a joke. When did Han Shiling become an effect? However, after the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, she was particularly embarrassed. When Han Hongi came to Han Shiling's house, he saw the messy scene, and his face suddenly became gloomy. Shiling, what are you doing? There was a hint of reprimand in his low voice. Han Hongi had already expected that after today's incident, Han Shiling's mood would definitely not be good. However, as a well-bred young lady, Han Shiling's current actions were really inappropriate. Chapter 1201. Han Hongi glanced at Han Shiling. If I didn't come, would this house be torn down by you? Hearing the dissatisfaction and reprimand in Han Hongi's words, Han Shiling muttered, Grandpa, you didn't help me at all today. You let Bailey Hongzhuang bully me. Today, the sovereign suddenly came back, and it seems that he has already seen Bailey Hongzhuang. Grandpa can't speak rashly. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance today was not bad. If you were magnanimous, it would be fine. But you had to ask, and you lost your face. Han Hongi's weathered face showed a touch of helplessness. Shiling, you really lost your sense of propriety now. Over the years, Han Shilling had always been so cold. No matter what had happened, she had never been so flustered. However, where was Han Shilling's original arrogant appearance? She was like a resentful woman who was paranoid. Now, she had actually started to smash things. Grandpa, you know that I have always liked Big Brother D. Now Bailey Hongzhuang came later and took Big Brother D away. Now she can be said to be showing off in the territory of Tiangang's sect. What's more, now the sovereign likes her very much. If she really marries Big Brother D in the future, then how can I stay in Tiangang's sect? Han Shilling stared at Han Hongyi, and her pretty face was full of anxiety. She never thought that there would be such a day. Originally, as long as the sovereign did not come, Big Brother D could not marry Bailey Hongzhuang. However, who would have thought that the sovereign would suddenly come back? All this seemed to have been agreed. All the luck was on the side of Bailey Hongzhuang. How could she bear it? Han Hongyi sighed faintly. How could he not know Shiling's thoughts? But the relationship between men and women had never been decided by one person. Shiling, young sovereign's previous attitude has been very obvious. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang is here, you can't capture his heart. Han Hongyi said slowly as a cold light flashed in his eyes. As soon as Han Shilling heard Han Hongyi's words, he seemed to understand something. His eyes lit up. Grandpa, you mean, not waiting for Han Shiling's words to finish, Han Hong, he had already interrupted her. In my opinion, why don't you participate in the competition as well? Han Shilling was slightly startled, and a hint of surprise appeared on her pretty face. I'll participate as well. Han Hongyi nodded slightly. Since you have this opportunity, it's not bad for you to participate. When you come back, your reputation will be even more stable. However, Han Shilling was somewhat dissatisfied. Grandpa, it wasn't easy to separate Bailey Hongzhuang and Brother D. This is a good opportunity for me and Brother D to improve our relationship. If I also participate in the assessment competition, then wouldn't I also be unable to see Big Brother D? Han Shilling was puzzled. Why did she need to participate in the assessment competition for this kind of thing? What's more, the risk in the assessment competition was not a joke. If she was not careful, she might lose her life. She did not want to inexplicably bear those risks. Looking at Han Shilling's childish appearance, Han Hongyi was somewhat disappointed. Since you want to achieve great things, you need to look at the overall situation. Chapter 1202. Seeing Han Hongyi's serious face, Han Shilling didn't dare to be willful anymore. Grandpa, then why should I participate in the assessment competition? As long as you get good results in the assessment competition, then you will have the support of the public. Han Hongyi's eyes were deep and distant. The small world is a closed world. Once you enter it, then the outside world won't know what is happening inside. If you go, then you'll have a chance. Once you make a move, you must eliminate all future troubles. Do you understand? Han Shilling was startled. Grandpa, you mean you want me to solve it myself? Han Hongyi glanced at Han Shilling. Didn't you find external forces before, but didn't succeed? As Han Hongyi's voice fell, Han Shilling couldn't help but be stunned. She thought that the matter of her finding the assassins of Shirtian Tower to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang was done very secretly, and no one would know. She didn't expect her grandpa to know. Since it's something that can't be discovered, then it must be done secretly. You can't let anyone have the chance to find out. Your current methods are still too immature. I have already arranged for the cultivators participating in the assessment competition. Except for the few cultivators from Kanglin College, the other cultivators will listen to you. When the time comes, you have to act according to the circumstances and solve the problem once and for all. Do you understand? Han Shilling listened to Han Hongyi's words, and her eyes became brighter and brighter. She didn't expect her grandpa to support her so much that he had even prepared these things for her. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang died, then she would have a chance. Even if Digo wouldn't forget Bailey Hongzhuang in a short time, as long as she was by DGE's side, then she would have hope. Grandpa, don't worry. This time I will not solve it cleanly. Han Shilling's clear eyes flashed with a ruthless light. As long as she could get what she wanted, all obstacles should be solved directly. Han Hongyi nodded slightly. You have to seize the opportunity. The future wife of Tiangang's sect can only be you. Hearing this, Han Shiling's face showed a proud smile. Grandpa, it will definitely be me. Now that even her grandfather was supporting her, what was there to be afraid of? Although Bailey Hongzhuang was talented, she was still no match for her. As long as she could get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang as soon as possible after entering the competition, then all these troubles would no longer exist. Since that's the case, don't be angry. Show everyone your magnanimous side in the next few days so that the sect master will have a better impression of you. Han Shilling nodded repeatedly. His original anger had quietly dissipated into nothingness. Grandpa, don't worry. I understand. At this moment, Han Shilling felt that all her anger was nothing. When she thought about how Bailey Hongzhuang would disappear from her sight forever, she felt that the air was unprecedentedly fresh. Seeing Han Shiling's happy appearance, Han Hongyi's eyes also showed a smile. He would never let anyone take away what his granddaughter liked. Moreover, only his granddaughter had the qualifications to be this Tiangang sect's young sect master's wife. However, Grandpa, I didn't take part in the assessment today. Can I still take part in the assessment now? A sense of worry appeared in Han Shiling's eyes. If she didn't have the opportunity to take part in the assessment, then everything would be ruined. Chapter 1203. After Han Hongyi left, Han Shilling sat on the chair in a good mood. Before, her grandfather had not expressed his opinion, so she thought that her grandfather did not support her. She did not expect that not only did her grandfather support her, but he had already started to act. Miss, you can rest assured now. Tao Tsongrong's face burst into an excited smile. Bailey Hongzhuang made her miss gnash her teeth and want to deal with her. Now, there was finally an opportunity. Han Shiling's eyes revealed a sarcastic smile. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang is proud now, so what? It won't be long before she dies in my hands. When she thought of Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogant appearance in front of her these days, she hated that she could not immediately kill Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her. Tao Tsongrong nodded again, and then a touch of worry appeared on her face. Miss, this Bailey Hongzhuang is not participating in the exam alone. There are 4 other cultivators from the Azure Water School who are participating with her. I think their relationship is very good. If you want to make a move, won't these 4 people be a big obstacle? After all, 5 people were not a small target. Hearing this, Han Shilling sneered. They are just a group of mobs. If they want to help Bailey Hongzhuang, I will send them to hell together. In addition to Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5, there were 7 other cultivators. Including her, there were 8 people. Even if it was a group fight, it would not be difficult for the 8 of them to kill Bailey Hongzhuang's group. What's more, although the 4 cultivators seemed to have a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, they might have already abandoned Bailey Hongzhuang at a dangerous moment. The human nature of this world has always been so cold. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. Looking at Han Shiling's confident appearance, Tao Tsongrong also smiled happily. Miss is right. With Miss's ability, it is absolutely easy to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. After Tiangang sect's cultivators knew that Han Shilling was also participating in the exam, everyone was very surprised. As everyone knows, cultivators participate in the exam in order to have the opportunity to enter a sect. Han Shilling was already a cultivator of Tiangang sect, so there was no need for her to participate in the exam. What's more, participating in the exam had a certain risk, so this was not a wise move. Even with Han Shilling's strength, there was a possibility of her falling in the exam. She already had the conditions that everyone envied, but now she wanted to take this narrow path. It's really strange. She wanted to take this narrow path. In my opinion, Han Shilling was stimulated by Bailey Hongzhuang, so she wants to participate in the assessment. That's true. Han Shilling has liked young sect leader for so long. Now that young sect leader suddenly brought Bailey Hongzhuang back, Han Shilling is not convinced at all. I wonder who will have better results between Han Shilling and Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Shilling wants to slap Bailey Hongzhuang's face. After a short moment of thinking, many cultivators already understood the reason why Han Shilling did this. Han Shilling's cultivation was originally stronger than Bailey Hongzhuang. Once the two of them participated in the exam, Han Shilling's results would most likely be better than Bailey Hongzhuang's. In this way, wouldn't it be a slap to Bailey Hongzhuang's face? After understanding this point, everyone couldn't help but sigh. The battle between the two women was also not simple. Chapter 1204. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others followed Di Beichen to purchase all the things they needed in the trading market, and then slowly walked towards the palace. Tiangangzong was really worthy of being a big sect. This trading market could be said to have everything they needed. The things they needed could be bought here, which inevitably made them exclaim. Originally, they felt that there was a big gap between the sects and the secular world, and it would be inconvenient to buy some things. Now it seemed that all of this was not a problem at all. Cultivating in the sect was the best place for a cultivator to improve their cultivation. Xia Jiqing walked in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, and her pretty face showed a bit of dissatisfaction. Hongzhuang, that Han Shilling suddenly wants to participate in the assessment competition. I think he definitely has no good intentions. Xia Jiqing did not restrain her voice. From the first time she met Han Shilling, she felt that Han Shilling was not a good person. When they were in the ruins, Han Shilling also squeezed Hong Zhuang everywhere. Now, after coming to Tiangangzong, needless to say, it was even more so. Since he wants to go, then let him go. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent, but in the depths of her eyes, there was a cold light. She originally intended to let Han Shilling be free in Tiangangzong for 2 more years. She did not expect Han Shilling to be so impatient and want to die early. Then she could only fulfill Han Shilling's wish. The grievances between them had to be solved sooner or later. Perhaps it would be more convenient to go to the small world to solve it. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent appearance, Xia Jiqing was a little worried. What if Han Shilling makes a move on you in the small world? Although she was very disdainful of Han Shilling grew up in Tiangangzong since he was a child. His strength was much stronger than ordinary cultivators. Hongzhuang's cultivation talent was very strong, but now it was not comparable to Han Shilling. Once Han Shilling made a move, the situation would become very dangerous. When Gong Shaoqing and the others heard this, they could not help but frown. In fact, they had also thought of this problem. They weren't familiar with Han Shilling, so they didn't know if Han Shilling was a cruel and merciless person. However, the possibility of that happening was very high. If she attacks, we will fight back. Different situations call for different measures. Compared with the nervousness of Xia Jiqing and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed very indifferent. Han Shilling was indeed stronger than her, and she was also certain that the reason why Han Shilling suddenly proposed to participate in the assessment competition was to make a move on her during the assessment competition. As long as it was a cover-up, no one would know that she was the one who did it. Even if others guessed it, as long as there was no evidence, no one could do anything to her. However, this point was also applicable to her. She had also thought about making a move on Han Shilling. From the time Han Shilling found an assassin to deal with her, she had already wanted to take Han Shilling's life. It was just that Han Shilling was quite far away from her, so she had no chance to make a move at that time. Now that she was in Tiangangzong, there were many people, and it was also inconvenient for her to make a move. However, once he went to the small world, he would be able to fly freely in the vast sea. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing was also helpless. In such a situation, there was no one other than Hongzhuang who could be so calm. Thinking of this, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Di Beichen, what do you think of this matter? Chapter 1205. Everyone looked at Di Beichen's expression and knew that Di Beichen was very unhappy because of this matter. If Hongzhuang was in danger, the person who was most worried was Di Beichen. Xia Jiqing shrugged her shoulders. She had always been a straightforward person, plus she really didn't like Han Shieling, so she said that. Di Beichen's palace. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came to the cultivation room. Since Bailey Hongzhuang knew about the cultivation room, she had been staying in the cultivation room these days. Even if there was not much time left, it was excellent to be able to improve her cultivation. Wifey, I will stop Han Shieling from participating in the assessment. The deep and charming eyes flashed with worry and dissatisfaction. Di Beichen also expected Han Shieling to participate in the assessment. Before this, Han Shieling had already found an assassin to assassinate Bailey Hongzhuang, but it was not successful. This time, Han Shieling must want to act by herself. He would not let Han Shieling have any chance to harm Hongzhuang. Looking at the anger in Di Beichen's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. Since Han Shieling wants to go, then let her go. Wifey. Di Beichen frowned. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If Han Shieling can't come back after participating in the assessment, will you be sad? With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Di Beichen immediately understood the meaning of Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Di Beichen quickly made a decision. I only want Wifey to come back safely. As for other people, I don't care. Listening to Di Beichen's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. I am relieved to know your answer. However, I promise you, as long as Han Shieling doesn't have any evil intentions towards me, I won't kill her. How about it? Although this possibility was very small, her delicate and beautiful face was filled with a reasonable smile. In any case, Han Shieling had helped Di Beichen before. Even if Han Shieling's actions had erased the original kindness, after all, it had existed. She was also grateful for Han Shieling's help to Di Beichen before. However, if Han Shieling still didn't know what was good for her, then she could only make Han Shieling disappear in front of them forever. Wifey, what I am worried about is your safety. Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was always thinking about him. Because of his friendship with Han Shieling, he had indeed hesitated before. But now, what he was really worried about was Hongzhuang. Don't worry, I will be fine. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a faint light of confidence. Her expression was indifferent. Even if Han Shieling's cultivation is a bit stronger than mine, she can't compare to me in other aspects. Don't worry, I have always cherished my life, and I won't do anything that I am not sure of. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident appearance, Di Beichen couldn't help but ask, Are you serious? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Of course it's true. Even if I don't think for myself, I will think for Jiqing and the others. Don't worry. Hearing this, Di Beichen was relieved. He understood that Hongzhuang had always cared about her sisterly relationship with Xia Jiqing. She would never let Xia Jiqing be in danger. As a result, this meant that Hongzhuang really had full confidence. Actually, I think it's good that Han Shieling and I participate in the assessment competition together. This way, she won't appear in front of you every day. Chapter 1206. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's playful teasing words, Di Beichen chuckled. My wife, are you jealous? Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders and raised an eyebrow at Di Beichen. Han Shieling has no way of making me jealous. The smile on Di Beichen's lips widened, his dark eyes filled with tenderness. Of the many thousand weak waters, I'll only take one ladle. To him, having Hongzhuang in this life was enough. There were only 7 days left before the assessment competition. Everyone knew about the feelings between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. So in these few days, no one disturbed Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, allowing the two to enjoy their time alone. Han Shieling no longer made a fuss after hearing Han Hongyi's words, and quietly cultivated in the room, causing some of the disciples to change their opinion of him. This kind of temperament was the Han Shieling they knew on ordinary days. The night before they left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen stood in front of the window, the bright moonlight shining through the window sill into the room. The two of them were silent. Even though they already knew that they were going to separate, the feeling of reluctance was especially strong the night before. My wife, you must be careful when you go to the pocket world. No matter what, you must come back safely. Di Beichen's deep and handsome eyes flickered with worry. When he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang leaving him for 2 years, he felt empty in his heart, as if he was missing the most important thing. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. Her dark phoenix eyes filled with reluctance. I will definitely come back safely. This was her promise. She would definitely come back safely. Seeing the seriousness and determination in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Di Beichen took a step forward and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. Smelling the familiar and refreshing fragrance, the reluctance in his heart grew stronger. In the end, he couldn't bear for her to leave. However, this was a path that they had to take. As long as Hongzhuang returned safely, they wouldn't have to suffer the pain of separation in the future. My wife, I won't be by your side for these 2 years. You can't be abducted by other men. Di Beichen said slowly. He was very familiar with Hongzhuang's charm. Even if Hongzhuang went to the pocket world, there were still many outstanding cultivators there. Without him as her protector, there would be many wild bees and butterflies. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and pressed her face against Di Beichen's chest. As the young master of Tiangang's sect, don't tell me you don't have confidence in your charm? That depends on my wife's thoughts. Di Beichen lowered his head and rested his chin on Bailey Hongzhuang's head. He had always been confident, but he cared too much about Hongzhuang. I've already found the best man in the world. With just a simple sentence, Bailey Hongzhuang had already expressed her feelings. A pair for life. The two hugged each other quietly. At this time, all words seemed very pale. The other party already knew what they were thinking. The next day, when the first ray of light appeared on the horizon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up and prepared to go to the pocket world. They were all very curious about the pocket world created by the strong. Di Beichen led everyone to the foot of Tiangang's Sex Mountain. The pocket world is a special sealed world. It will only open when the assessment competition starts and ends. Chapter 1207. The two palace masters and the great elder walked beside Di Beichen, and their hearts were filled with emotion. These cultivators were confident in participating in the assessment competition. Who knew how many of them would come back when the assessment competition was over 2 years later? Listening to Di Beichen's words, everyone's eyes were filled with amazement. They didn't expect this teleportation array to be so magical that it could directly send them to the small world. This process was much more convenient than they had imagined. This is the first time I've heard of a teleportation array. It feels very powerful. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with excitement. Although she knew that there were endless risks in the small world, it was also a good experience to be able to see this teleportation array that ordinary people couldn't see at all. Although Dongfang Yu and the others didn't speak, their expressions were also filled with curiosity. The means of the big sects were really endless and dazzling. Now all of this strengthened their determination to participate in the assessment competition. Only in this way would they have the opportunity to become a member of the sect. You haven't seen the world. Wu Yuexin glanced coldly at Xia Jiqing. With Xia Jiqing's identity, she was not qualified to represent Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment competition. For this assessment competition, she had made sufficient preparations. She just wanted to get a good ranking in the assessment. If it weren't for the sudden appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the first place would definitely be hers. Now that she thought that such a group of bumpkins had stolen her limelight, she was dissatisfied. Listening to Wu Yuexin's words, Xia Jiqing glared at Wu Yuexin with dissatisfaction. You haven't seen the world, so what? She didn't know Wu Yuexin before, but now that she saw Wu Yuexin standing beside Han Xiling, she already knew that Wu Yuexin was their opponent. Naturally, she wouldn't be polite with her words. Wu Yuexin was stunned and looked at Xia Jiqing angrily. I'm still better than you. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She didn't expect Han Xiling and Wu Yuexin to be together. The two were really like-minded, and their words were very disgusting. I don't think so. Xia Jiqing shrugged her shoulders indifferently. Her expression was indifferent and innocent, as if she didn't put Wu Yuexin in her eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to help, but seeing that Xia Jiqing's eloquence was getting better and better, she could solve it herself. Han Shilling patted Wu Yuexin's shoulder, indicating that Wu Yuexin should be patient for now. They were about to enter the small world. If they wanted to make a move, they would have to wait until they enter the small world. If the conflict was exposed in front of others now, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the others died, everyone would suspect that they had something to do with it. Noticing the vigilance in Han Shiling's eyes, Wu Yuexin took a deep breath and could only temporarily suppress this dissatisfaction. They were all excellent cultivators selected from the affiliated forces of Tiangang sect, and had always been very arrogant. She naturally felt inferior to Han Shilling. Whether it was identity, status, or strength, there was a huge gap between them. However, for people like Bailey Hongzhuang, who came from the backwater, she looked down on her from the bottom of her heart. In her opinion, only Han Shiling's identity was worthy of the young sect master. Chapter 1208. Under the leadership of Di Beichun, everyone finally arrived at the location of the transmission array. In the center of the white jade platform, there was a huge circular totem. Just looking at the complex lines made one feel that it was mysterious and shocking, as if there was an incomprehensible mystery in it, attracting everyone's attention. This is the transmission array. Gong Shaoqing's cold and handsome face revealed a bit of emotion. Apart from powerful sects and powerful forces, he was afraid that no transmission array would exist. Not only Gong Shaoqing and the others, but the other cultivators also felt a burst of amazement when they saw the transmission array. Although they had heard of the transmission array, it was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes. Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyin walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, their eyes showing a bit of worry and reluctance. You are about to leave for the small world. This separation will be 2 years. You must come back safely. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes flashed with a bit of moisture, and her voice was a bit low. After this separation, she didn't know when they would meet again. What's more, the small world was full of risks. If someone had an accident, then she may never see them again. Yinfeng, you can rest assured that we will come back safely. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a confident smile. After we come back, we will go to the Azure Water School to see you. Hearing this, Zhang Yunfeng nodded. Good. I will wait for you at the Azure Water School. Cui Haoyin also looked at Dongfang Yu and Gong Shaoqing. Brother, you must come back and drink with me. Dongfang Yu and Gong Shaoqing's faces both showed a smile. At that time, we will drink until we are drunk. Cui Haoyin nodded heavily. This time, he couldn't participate in the assessment with Dongfang Yu and the others. It was his regret. He only hoped that they would have a chance to meet again in the future. Although I can't participate in the assessment, I will work hard to cultivate. You must be careful not to be caught up by me. On the other side, Han Shilling also stood beside Han Hongyi. Grandfather, I will leave soon. Han Hongyi nodded slightly. Grandfather believes that with your ability, you will be able to come back safely. At that time, everything you want will be yours. Han Shilling's eyes lit up, and his smile grew even brighter. I will definitely seize this opportunity. Han Shilling emphasized when she talked about seizing the opportunity. She would definitely seize the opportunity to get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in front of Di Beichun and gazed at his peerlessly handsome face. Her clear eyes were filled with deep affection. Beichun, I'm leaving. Di Beichun nodded slightly and said in a low and suppressed voice, Take care. I will. You have to take care of yourself, too. The two of them looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with deep love. Their love was stronger than gold. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun reluctantly say goodbye, their eyes couldn't help but change a bit. They had long known that Di Beichun liked Bailey Hongzhuang very much. Now, Looking at this situation, they understood how deep the feelings between the two of them were. Han Shilling clenched her fists, and the fierceness in her eyes intensified. The love between the two of them was like a thorn in her eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang had snatched away the feelings that belonged to her. Han Hongyi patted Han Shiling's shoulder. "Shilling, these things will soon cease to exist." Han Shilling nodded, but in her mind, she was thinking about Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang fell in her hands, she would never let Bailey Hongzhuang die so easily. Chapter 1209. Very quickly, everyone gathered together again. Di Beichen stood in front of everyone. The small world is a world of its own. Cultivators from every place will be transported to different places in the small world. However, every team will be together. As you walk from the periphery to the inside, you will gradually meet other cultivators. The final result will be revealed at the center of the small world. As soon as he finished speaking, Di Beichen glanced at the two palace masters. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing immediately understood and walked in front of everyone, handing a black token to each of them. "This is your identity card. After you enter the small world, drip your blood on the card, and your information will be displayed on it. In the next 2 years, the points you obtain from killing the demonic beasts will be recorded on your identity token. Therefore, you must keep this identity token well." Di Beichen's deep and magnetic voice clearly traveled into everyone's ears. "I hope that when I go to the small world to welcome you 2 years later, all of you will be able to return safely." Hearing Di Beichen's words, joy flashed across the cultivators' eyes. The fact that the young sect master had said such words to them was enough to make them happy. Now, everyone could set off. Following Di Beichen's words, everyone walked to the center of the teleportation array. The two palace masters and great elder placed their spirit stones on both sides of the teleportation array. Only then could the teleportation array be activated. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest felt a mysterious energy enveloping their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was still fixed on Di Beichen, who was outside the teleportation array. After this separation, they would meet again in 2 years. Di Beichen's figure suddenly disappeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone could only feel that mysterious energy tearing their bodies apart, faintly making them feel uncomfortable. When everyone opened their eyes again, the scene in front of them was completely different. Everyone looked at the situation around them. They were already in a forest. There were dense trees in front of them, and sunlight poured on their bodies through the gaps between the leaves. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of green that stretched as far as the eye could see. In just a short period of time, everyone felt a burst of heat. The weather in this small world was different from the cool weather in Tiangang sect. It was very hot here. This is the small world. It doesn't look any different from the outside world. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with surprise. She had always been curious about what the world created by the strong would look like. From the looks of it now, that expert was indeed an extraordinary figure. This was a completely different world. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and looked around. Not only that, the elemental energy here is exceptionally dense, twice that of the outside world. The eyes of Dongfang Yu and the others lit up. A place rich in origin energy was a paradise for cultivators. This meant that cultivating here for 1 year was equivalent to cultivating outside for 2 years. As a result, the gap between them was obvious. It seems that this small world is also a good place. Bai Junyu's sunny and handsome face burst into a happy smile. As long as they could leave the small world safely, their progress would definitely not be small. Chapter 1210. At this time, you are still in the mood to be happy. I think you really have a pig brain. Han Shiling's eyes were filled with a cold light. She had been tolerating Bailey Hongzhuang for a long time. She even dared to be so close to Brother D in front of her. Now that they were in the small world, no one outside would know what happened here. She didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang continue to live. She could no longer tolerate it. With Han Shiling's voice falling, everyone's expression changed a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing, and the others immediately stood together. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stood side by side, they saw the other 7 cultivators standing together behind Han Shiling. Seeing this, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others turned ugly. Although they had long thought that Han Shiling would find a way to deal with Hongzhuang, they did not expect that the other 7 cultivators would all be bought by Han Shiling. As a result, the gap in strength between them was not small. Han Shiling, you are too despicable, Xia Jiqing said angrily. The pride on Han Shiling's face became more and more intense. She did not care about Xia Jiqing's accusation. In this world, the winner takes all. As long as you are dead, everything will be decided by me. Wu Yuexin and the others also showed a smile on their faces. They did not have any good feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. These cultivators from the countryside did not have the qualifications to represent Tiangang's sect in the assessment competition with them. Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces were a bit dignified. Originally, they still had a chance to fight. Now, the other party was stronger than them in number and strength. It was very difficult for them to get through this level. Looking at Han Shiling's proud face, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a mocking arc. She usually pretends to be aloof, but now that she's in a small world, her true nature has been completely exposed. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shiling sarcastically. This woman's ability to disguise was really not that good. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still unperturbed, Han Shiling's resentment deepened. She had always hated such an indifferent Bailey Hongzhuang. All of her aloofness and arrogance was just an act, but Bailey Hongzhuang's coldness was emitted from her bones. Comparing the two of them, she felt an indescribable jealousy in her heart. So what? Do you think there are still people protecting you now? Han Shiling's expression was ferocious. At this point, she no longer needed to maintain her image. She only wanted to make Bailey Hongzhuang suffer a fate worse than death. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Do you think a person like you is worthy of my protection? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, her posture revealing a trace of charm and laziness. However, her indifferent look clearly showed that she did not take Han Shiling seriously. Hearing this, Han Shiling's expression became even more ferocious. Bailey Hongzhuang, you really are a disgusting woman. She could not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang could still be so proud at this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. The ridicule in her eyes deepened. I just like to see you hate me, but can't do anything about it. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.